It all starts on the day the MC's school catches fire in a completely chaotic turn of events. Instead of sprinting for the exit like a normal person, he decides to head straight to the art room. Since it seemed like lights out anyway, the guy preferred to spend his final moments in his favorite place in the whole world. He genuinely thought that was going to be his tragic end as the flames swallowed everything around him. The guy accepted his fate, expecting everything to be over right then and there, but life had some way stranger plans in store. Upon waking up, he realizes he didn't end up cooked to a crisp and starts getting suspicious about the unbelievable place he landed in. It has been a whole week since the MC somehow got dragged inside the very painting he drew himself. Even though he's safe and sound, he still worries whether his former students managed to escape that terrible fire. All of a sudden, a pretty curious creature with massive ears pops up right next to him in the middle of the woods. The former teacher never imagined he would see a three-eyed rabbit in his life, but the little guy just makes a cute noise. Time flows in a totally wild way over there, and soon enough, a tiny winged unicorn decides to show up just to say hi. Because of all this temporal mess, the guy doesn't even know how long he's been stuck inside this canvas anymore. At least he's already managed to figure out the basic rules for surviving in this peaceful new home of his. The first major rule of this world starts getting tested when he grabs his brush and begins drawing an apple. Absolutely everything the MC draws there comes to life, becoming totally real with just a single touch. Now he can simply paint his own snack and watch the apples fall straight off the canvas onto the room's floor. If he paints a bag of salt, cooking pots, or even rose bushes, everything materializes like magic. The guy gets extremely happy realizing he's finally free from working just to pay for monthly groceries. However, this incredible ability has very clear boundaries, and drawing real people is definitely off limits. The human copies he tries to paint end up as lifeless figures that can't breathe, which leaves him pretty bummed out. At the end of the day, he actually prefers not having some apocalyptic power so he can just enjoy his peaceful, lazy life. The second rule is that he can interact with the real world through a golden picture frame hanging on a tree. When he decided to take a peek outside, he discovered that nearly 30 years had passed since the school fire. The world had changed completely after that day, and now people live in what they call the 31st year of purification. Looking through the frame, the guy witnesses warriors outside casting magic and shouting to attack a monster. The warriors use magical attacks with glowing bows, trying everything to wipe the creature off the face of the earth. A massive fire monster roars as it gets pelted by several blue energy arrows launched by the hunters. The battle outside is pure madness, full of crazy explosions and devastating lightning strikes flying everywhere. The MC watches all that chaotic noise while munching on his snack, completely unbothered and wanting zero part in the chaos. Having zero desire to get taken down by monsters in the modern world, he decides it's best to stay safe inside the painting. The third rule reveals that the painting's forest has a completely unique ecosystem full of glowing plants. Even though he only painted a humble, cozy cabin and a few trees, the place generated mountains and foliage he never even planned. Best of all, absolutely every single magical creature inside the painting treats the guy with the sweetest affection imaginable. Even the little birds perch right on his shoulder to sing cheerfully while he gathers his magical herbs throughout the forest. A chubby red squirrel shows up to offer him a little fruit, making him wonder if it's because he's their creator. It makes total sense that the inhabitants of the painting he created feel a massive fondness for their own creator. That's when the fourth rule kicks in, as a floating screen pops up revealing detailed info about the squirrel's fruit. The guy gets startled by the system window and realizes this isn't a forest rule, but rather his very own power. This blue screen is actually an ability that awakened in Earth's awakened ones after the great cataclysm that reshaped the planet. He finds it fascinating that he became one of those awakened individuals that people outside now call hunters. To him, this painting feels a lot like one of those cozy simulation games where the only goal is to farm and cook. The system mentions alchemy, and even though he isn't sure if he'll ever use it, he decides to try crafting medicine with what he gathered today. Determined to make the most of this new unemployed gamer-style life, he clicks the button to start unlocking new features. Spending his days just eating and sleeping without having to endure the exhausting grind of a desk job is absolute paradise. Today's lunch is going to be honey-glazed sweet potato fries, and the food supply in the cabin never goes bad, staying perfectly fresh forever. Now he lives the ideal routine of preparing his meals peacefully without any rush or worry about tomorrow. This is a level of peace he could never have experienced back when he was working himself to the bone as a school teacher. He is loving every single second of this new reality, but decides to take another curious glance through the golden frame on the tree. Suddenly, the guy hears a very weird noise coming directly from the doorway connecting his world to the outside. He steps closer to the magical frame, trying to figure out what is happening in the school's old abandoned art room. The final rule of that strange place begins to reveal itself in the window of the old abandoned school classroom. Amidst all that dirt and debris, the mysterious painting featuring the guy's portrait remains completely untouched on the floor. The truth is that the MC, named Geo, ended up transforming into a living, stylish portrait. Trapped inside that golden frame, the guy seems deep in thought about everything that happened in his previous life. Suddenly, the guy's eyes start to glow as a dark, mysterious energy begins to pulse from the artwork. A dark mist resembling magical ink starts overflowing from the canvas, spilling onto the classroom floor. This dark energy spreads rapidly, creating a thick fog that seems to have a mind of its own outside the frame. All that strange smoke gathers together until Geo finally manages to materialize his actual physical body. He takes his very first cautious steps in the middle of that room he hadn't laid eyes on in nearly 30 years. Hearing a strange noise coming down the hallway, the guy suspects it might just be some stray animal passing by. Not wanting to risk his precious neck, he simply dissolves into dark smoke and retreats right back into the safety of the canvas. He leaps back into his wonderful, cozy home hidden inside that gorgeous forest. Geo truly adores the peace of his sanctuary, where he spends his days harvesting vegetables and whipping up delicious recipes. The guy digs into a massive plate of homemade pasta he cooked up himself, looking happier than ever. He sinks comfortably into the couch wrapped in a warm blanket, deciding he never wants to leave this place again. Meanwhile, in the real world, a few armed men raid the ruined school and stumble upon Geo's stunning portrait. One of them inspects the painting up close, realizing it's in pristine condition and even features an official title. Thanks to their teammates' appraisal skill, they figure out the artwork is officially named The Portrait of Geo. The men quickly gather that such a spotless item in the middle of all that ruin could only be a valuable treasure from another dimension. They are dead certain the object originated from one of those dangerous dungeons that suddenly popped up in the modern world. Wasting no time, they cover the painting with a tarp, already dreaming about the massive pile of cash rich collectors will pay for it. One of the mercenaries starts grinning from ear to ear, imagining the absurd amount of money he's about to make today. While poor Geo is fast asleep enjoying a super peaceful nap, the guys tie up his frame with heavy ropes outside. As the painting gets transported, the doorway landscape automatically shifts, showing glimpses of forests, cities, and warehouses. The painting's entrance shifts once more, now displaying the luxurious interior of a theater packed with wealthy folks. The guy's portrait is placed right under the main stage spotlights, becoming the star attraction of a high-end auction. All the rich snobs in the crowd are mesmerized by the mysterious painting's beauty and start dropping ridiculous bids. The painting is sold for a mind-boggling fortune and heads straight to the private gallery of an eccentric collector. The new owner rides down to his mansion's ultra-secured basement using an elevator plastered with dark magic wards. This dressed-up guy walks proudly through his gallery corridors, carrying the portrait he just bought for a fortune. The place is packed with bizarre relics, sealed with spells and talismans, showing this guy doesn't play around when it comes to collecting. He walks into a massive marble hall, strutting arrogantly toward the exact wall where he plans to hang his new jewel. With extreme care, the man places the golden frame onto the peg, feeling an indescribable wave of satisfaction with his fresh purchase. Geo's portrait now decorates the main gallery wall, looking like a true masterpiece fit for royalty. This rich guy is Bisabeol, an extraordinarily powerful, high-ranking hunter and leader of one of the most influential guilds around. Shortly before that happened, one of his trusted assistants decided to drop by the boss's private office. The glasses-wearing staffer questions if the leader isn't going a bit overboard, spending so much cash on these mysterious items. Bisabeol gets outraged by the remark and wipes down the golden frame, making it crystal clear that nobody controls his collector obsession. He feels deeply offended by the assistant's nerve, defending his right to burn through his own money however he pleases. The leader lets out a smug laugh, saying he bought the portrait with his own cash, so nobody has any business meddling. He proudly reveals that even the president of the Hunter Association had her eyes on that rare painting, dying to get it. All of this began 31 years ago when the Great Cataclysm shattered the world, plunging modern society into total chaos. Multiple dimensions collided with Earth, spawning dungeons packed with terrifying monsters and entities that leveled entire cities. Amidst the desperation, human awakened ones blessed with the system emerged, fighting tooth and nail to save humanity from going extinct. The person who created the system and saved the world is considered a living legend and a true symbol of eternity for everyone. That legendary warrior is none other than Dan Hyra, the mighty president of the entire influential Hunter Association. She went as far as offering an astronomical sum of 200 billion coins for Gio's painting just to add it to her collection. The assistant in glasses stands there jaw-dropped, finding out even the most powerful person in the world was ready to buy the artwork. Bisabiol admits the painting is so shrouded in mystery that even his max-level appraisal skill couldn't spot the hidden details. Blown away by the revelation, the subordinate bows respectfully, apologizing for ever doubting his master's wisdom. Bisabiol confesses the truth is that even he doesn't have the faintest clue what that mysterious portrait actually represents. Hearing that, the assistant in glasses is totally shocked, completely unable to wrap his head around how his boss couldn't appraise the item. He recalls his boss rose to become a legendary tier hunter using nothing but his incredible appraisal ability. The staffer starts panicking as it sinks in that the master of one of the country's biggest guilds can't decipher a simple painting. He breaks out in a cold sweat, imagining the terrifying danger the existence of such a mysterious object could bring to the entire planet. Bisabiol finds the guy's panic hilarious and jokes that sudden flattery isn't going to get him a salary raise. With a sinister look and glowing eyes, the hunter claims this portrait is by far the most dangerous thing they've ever stumbled upon. The assistant swallows hard as his boss reveals with a smirk that that's precisely why he wanted the painting so badly. The mysterious man touches the golden frame, starting to wonder who on earth could be the insanely lifelike person painted on that canvas. He studies the mind-blowing details, thinking that if it was crafted by human hands, it's nothing short of pure artistic genius. To the collector, the image looks so realistic it gives the distinct impression that a real person is trapped inside the frame. Bisabiol zeroes in on the painting, activating his maximum visual power to break the mystery open once and for all. However, the moment he tries reading the object's soul, the hunter gets pulled into a deep darkness where he can't see a single thing. He finds himself floating in the middle of a pitch-black void where only his own yellow eyes manage to shine. That darkness turns out to be so deep, colorful, and vast that it makes the guy feel like he's drifting in the middle of the cosmos. Meanwhile, poor Gio keeps taking it super easy inside his cabin, completely clueless about the weirdness unfolding outside. Bisabiol snaps back to reality, celebrating wildly like he hit the jackpot because he finally found something immune to his power. With a wild grin, the rich guy is dead certain that painting conceals secrets far greater than he ever imagined. Out of nowhere, Gio hears a sinister laugh echoing through the forest, jumping so hard he drops his basket right onto the ground. The former teacher gets totally creeped out, his heart leaping into his throat as he realizes his peace might be on the line. He places a hand on his chest in shock, never imagining his lazy, quiet lifestyle could ever be threatened inside his own cabin. The guy looks toward the golden portal and sees the outline of the rich hunter coughing on the other side, getting ready to talk to him. Bisabiol lightly taps on the painting's glass with a smile, calling the guy teacher and asking if he can hear him. The hunter asks if he'd like to have a friendly chat, but the MC would literally rather turn into a potato than talk to him. Gio peeks through the portal and notices his frame is now hanging in an insanely luxurious marble hall belonging to some collector. He sighs in disappointment, realizing the only exit from his secret world opens straight into the middle of a heavily guarded private gallery. The guy starts picturing the worst, thinking that if he steps out of the painting to explore the modern world, he'll end up busted for trespassing. He gets even more paranoid, thinking people might burn him at the stake, believing he's some kind of haunted portrait ghost. On the outside, Bisabiol scratches his head in concern, thinking maybe he came off a bit too strong and spooked the resident of the frame. The rich guy decides to call it a day, promising to return tomorrow while the MC just gathers his plants with a scowl on his face. Gio goes into full panic mode hearing that lunatic plans to return, frantically trying to figure out how he's going to protect his peace. The next day, Gio's routine kicks off with him whipping up a downright heavenly breakfast of fried eggs and sausage. After eating, he decides the flowers he picked earlier have dried enough to brew a delicious dessert tea. The guy organizes his dried flowers and medicinal herbs into the cabin's wooden boxes, getting everything ready for the steep. Only when it comes time to make the drink, he hits a major snag. He doesn't actually own a teapot. No big deal for him, though. He simply walks over to his art easel and starts drawing a ceramic teapot. With just a few brush strokes, the teapot takes shape on the canvas and instantly materializes for real, dropping right into the painter's hands. Gio holds his shiny new teapot, super proud of his broken ability to craft any object out of thin air. He tosses the herbs into hot water and starts pouring his blue tea with ultimate chill vibes at his kitchen table. The guy closes his eyes and takes the first sip of his warm brew, soaking in every bit of comfort his cabin has to offer. Gio savors the blue liquid, pleasantly surprised by how insanely tasty and relaxing the aroma turned out to be. The floating system instantly alerts him that he just created a medicinal tea that aids blood clotting and boosts immunity. Sitting on the couch, he finds the tea's effects super cool, but realizes he has no way to test it since his body works differently now. Truth is, ever since the day he stepped into the painting, the guy completely lost every standard physical need humans have. The MC can still walk, eat, and even sleep, but all of that now operates on a much higher level. He feels neither hot nor cold, and his body literally hasn't produced a single drop of sweat under any circumstances. To make this new reality even better, he also doesn't have to waste time running to the bathroom to take care of business anymore. Gio checks his reflection in the cup, amazed to realize he turned into a highly evolved being thanks to that painting. The guy celebrates big time for dodging even the chore of scrubbing the toilet, but his actual problem is way worse. The rich collector's annoying voice echoes from the outside again, calling him teacher and ruining his quiet time once more. Faced with such persistent nagging, the MC can only let out a long, exhausted sigh of pure annoyance. 11 whole days have passed since the wealthy collector began talking to himself in front of the frame, trying to get the guy's attention. The rich guy says it's a shame for him to stay isolated, but the MC, being a proud introvert, infinitely prefers his precious solitude. According to the portal system, the collector is considered a fairly safe individual who even holds a pretty friendly status level. On the other side, Bisabil complains that the master of the painting only blinks his eyes, which makes him super anxious for a chat. To win over the artwork, the rich guy goes to the absurd length of bringing a tied-up, hooded wrongdoer as an offering. The yellow-eyed man calmly explains that the most common offerings for magical entities are usually sinful humans. He offers to bring whatever type of wrongdoer the guy wants, as long as he responds and lays down his conditions. Even with all that weird generosity, Gio feels that receiving human offerings is an insane amount of mental pressure on his head. He knows that if he answers even once, things will spiral completely out of control, and the collector will try talking to him in 20 languages. The guy tries to savor his marvelous blue tea, but feels like he's going to choke out of nervousness from all the kissing up happening outside. Gio overhears the gallery staffers mentioning that the wealthy guy is actually the president of one of the biggest conglomerates in the country. Bisabayol sighs dramatically, asking once more if the mysterious creature in the frame really doesn't want to talk to him. The MC's portrait stays completely frozen in total silence, playing dumb like nobody's home. Realizing he won't get anywhere today, the rich guy decides to say a polite goodbye, promising to return another time. He turns around and struts impressively through the lavish halls of his private gallery, leaving the guy in peace for now. Gio sets his cup aside, admitting the collector doesn't really seem like a bad or malicious person deep down in his heart. Still, the constant presence of that man and all that daily sucking up leave him completely drained of energy. The guy eagerly hopes the rich man's hype fades soon so he can go back to focusing on his peaceful cooking. He decides to brush off the headaches and opens one of his wooden cabinets to grab a bag of bright white wheat flour. Gio starts sifting the flour into a big bowl, thinking it might actually be a good idea to try talking a bit with the rich guy. After all, it would be a massive disaster if the collector got pissed off by the silence and decided to burn the painting in wild rituals. He keeps mixing the cake batter with a worried mind, not knowing what would happen to his magical forest if the canvas got destroyed. Since the guy has zero intention of turning into campfire roast, he decides to use a magical hourglass to keep track of time. While his delicious bread bakes in the oven, Gio plans a safe way to regain total control over his golden portal. The hourglass runs out completely, and the scene cuts to an elevator control panel showing the gallery's 5th basement level. The metal doors slide open, and a female guard in a black suit steps out holding a clipboard to conduct her routine night patrol. She walks down the hallways checking the temperature and humidity, confirming everything is totally normal at 4 in the morning. The guard slowly approaches the special section housing Gio's mysterious portrait to do one final check. However, upon glancing at the wall, she finds nothing more than a painting of an empty cabin in the middle of a forest, with no guy inside it. The employee gets extremely confused because she distinctly remembered that artwork containing a detailed portrait. Out of nowhere, a terrifying chill runs down the woman's spine, throwing the guard into high alert. She spins around, startled, feeling a mysterious, freezing presence rising right behind her in the middle of that dark hall. The gallery's massive marble hall gets completely plunged into shadow, creating an atmosphere straight out of a horror movie. That's when a calm, mysterious voice whispers a simple hello right next to the ear of the poor woman, who freezes in terror. A mysterious hooded figure draped in a black cloak emerges from the shadows, asking if she'd like to chat for a moment. Panicking over the ghost-like appearance, the employee drops her clipboard and pen right onto the floor as sheer terror takes over. Far away from there, we see the imposing building of the Collectors Guild, known as one of the 3 largest and most powerful in the country. The lavish private gallery is watched over by 300 curators who hold official licenses as professional monster hunters. In the middle of that monumental lobby, a mysterious silver-haired man walks elegantly while carrying a metal briefcase. He steps into the main elevator, keeping an extremely calm and cold composure, like he's about to handle a major problem. The guy presses the button to head down, while reflecting on recent rumors that a ghost is haunting the deep levels of the facility. This stylish hunter in a black trench coat starts talking to another co-worker as he walks calmly through the basement. The co-worker hands him a cup of coffee, revealing there have been 17 complaints regarding strange sightings on the 5th basement floor. He explains that the boss, Besabiol, collects any random junk he deems art, even if the object is actually a dangerous monster. Because of the boss's bizarre habit, most of the hauntings in the corporate building were always caused by actual monsters. The silver-haired man takes a thoughtful sip of his coffee, realizing that so many consecutive complaints from curators is pretty unusual. He knows human resources managed to quiet the rumors for now, but warns they won't be able to sweep it under the rug forever. The investigator in the trench coat already smells trouble brewing, realizing he's going to have a ton of extra work on his hands with this case. Even while venting about the workload, the silver-haired hunter holds his warm cup, knowing he's well used to this routine. The silver-haired guy's name is Yu Sung-woon, a high-level hunter who works as a special curator for the guild. Seeing that the curator agreed to look into the case, the glasses-wearing staffer beams a huge smile, praising the guy for being super reliable. He goes as far as suggesting the guy step up to administrative manager, but the hunter lets out a dry laugh and turns it down instantly. The co-worker reminds him that he used to lead a major scientific research team back at the famous Hunter Association. Sung-woon explains he dealt with immense pressure and shade from his old lab colleagues when he chose to turn in his resignation. The guy admits he just wants to live a quiet life out of the spotlight, leading his colleague to accept his choice without pushing further. Either way, the gallery haunting rumors need to be contained fast, and the assistant is already putting together a report. He hands over a tablet loaded with all the data gathered on the ghost, mentioning he'll be beefing up security training. The reports display exact details about the first sighting of the alleged ghost, who constantly wears a black cloak and has dark hair. The funniest part is that the sketch of the ghost, drawn by witnesses, shows the haunting entity is an insanely attractive man. The files state the monster makes zero sound when moving, and that it's super tough to hold eye contact with his perfect face. Skimming the data, Sung-woon finds it odd that this mysterious being wanders the gallery without making the slightest effort to hide his presence. The assistant nods in agreement while the silver curator starts finding the whole ghost story stranger by the minute. He finds it weird that the creature showed up multiple times yet never tried to harm a single human, which is super rare for monsters. After all, literally every single monster that has come out of dungeons to this day has shown unprovoked, lethal hatred toward humanity. If a peaceful creature like that actually existed in the real world, it would definitely be breaking news on every newspaper on the planet. Or it would have already been locked away in a top-secret Hunter Association lab to serve as a lifelong test subject for studies. But what throws the silver-haired guy off the most is a bizarre detail in the report, stating that the monster routinely hands out gifts. The colleague explains that the hooded being always starts a normal conversation by asking for the employee's name, as if he were human. He theories that the monster might genuinely believe he's a person, and right after, the report reveals his name is Gio. Even though the witnesses are scared out of their minds and unable to look the ghost in the eye, he keeps the chat going super politely. The topic of conversation is always casual, and the mysterious entity never tries to force anyone to leak personal info they don't want to share. And the most unbelievable part is that at the end of every friendly chat, the ghost reaches out his hand to hand over a mysterious gift. Reading the specifics of what the ghost usually hands out, the curator's eyes go wide, leaving him completely frozen. The assistant in glasses puts on a serious face and nods, confirming that what's written in the report is the absolute truth. He displays photos of cookies, lollipops, and boxes of chocolates, wondering what kind of domestic baker monster this could possibly be. Sung-woon asks if they've already run chemical scans on the treats, and his colleague explains they tested everything super quick and safely. He confesses they borrowed inmates to act as guinea pigs, making the curator realize the wild stunts the boss pulls. The silver-haired guy gets concerned, asking if the food was poisoned or packed with dangerous toxic substances. To everyone's shock, the colleague reveals that the mysterious sweets actually worked just like top-tier medical remedies. The curator jumps, falling into complete shock upon discovering the ghost's treats possessed such powerful healing properties. Tests showed the snacks cured anemia, headaches, and fevers, acting precisely based on the physical needs of whoever ate them. The more info the guy gets on this case, the more he realizes he's dealing with one of the trickiest hauntings ever seen. On top of being able to read people's physical states, this being can manifest objects out of thin air and bypass all building security. He managed to break into one of the most secured spots in the country and display his own canvas without triggering a single intruder alarm. Facing so many off-the-charts abilities, Sung-woon concludes this mysterious monster undoubtedly commands a ridiculously high power level. What makes it worse is that since the creature only shows goodwill, the curator admits it would be way easier if it were just trashing the place. After all, history has proven that apparent goodwill coming from dungeon entities usually conceals utterly terrifying dangers. He remembers how expeditions from various countries were sent years ago to establish peaceful contact with beings from another dimension. Back then, all the humans who crossed the peaceful portal ended up returning with their bodies freakishly altered and full of mutations. That alien civilization thought human bodies were inefficient and decided to do them a favor by altering their anatomy. Because of that tragic event, humanity learned the hard way that a monster is a monster, and every single one must be treated as an enemy. Determined to crack this mystery, the curator announces he'll personally take charge of the case, being a true expert in this line of work. The staffer thanks him in relief, while the silver-haired guy mentions it's simply his job to clean up the guild's messes. Before parting ways, the colleague calls out to the curator, warning he has one more crucial piece of info regarding the exact day the haunting began. He reveals that all this bizarre commotion and the ghost sightings started happening from one very specific date. It all kicked off the exact moment Boss Bisabeol hung Gio's mysterious portrait on the wall of the building's 5th basement level. The curator steps into the elevator, lost in thought as the doors close, knowing his peace of mind is about to be gone for good. He can already picture his crazy boss laughing out loud and cluttering his workspace with brand new cursed artifacts to appraise. The guy knows Bisabeol loves picking fights and will soon show up with more magic vases and dangerous trinkets for him to deal with. He recalls his boss Bisabeol's loud laughs trying to push fresh, cursed art pieces onto him to manage. The boss loves celebrating his expensive buys with champagne, insisting the new mystery of Gio's portrait falls squarely under his responsibility. The colleague in glasses just smiles sympathetically, knowing the silver curator was just handed the toughest job in the whole guild. The curator watches the elevator door shut with a look of pure exhaustion from having to babysit yet another one of his boss's shenanigans. The elevator glides down silently toward the 5th basement level, where the ghost usually makes his mysterious late-night appearances. Holding a colorful lollipop, the curator realizes this mission wasn't just some boring, routine extra chore. Crunching down on the candy with all his strength, the guy accepts that tonight has officially turned into a grueling overtime shift. With the lollipop stick in his mouth, the hunter walks with purpose down the lavish, silent hallways of the gallery. The guy checks the time on his phone, confirming it is precisely 4:29 in the morning at the start of his sweep. Sung-woon carefully peeks out from behind a pillar and finally spots the suspicious shadow he was hunting for. He spots the man in the black cloak with bare feet, matching the detailed description written in the report to a T. The hunter notices the ghost only pops up before sunrise, when the building is practically empty with 0 staff around. He begins theory crafting whether the entity cares about observers or if there are specific rules dictating his actions. Sung-woon suspects the being is either shy or insanely sharp, activating his system screen to scan the floor with precision. The guy considers himself super lucky to have tracked down the ghost on his very first night of investigating. He decides to just watch the target from afar, triggering his advanced hearing skill to catch any subtle sound. The hunter realizes the other guards lacked boosted hearing, which is why they assume the creature moved without sound. With his skill maxed out, he catches an extremely faint rustle, like blades of grass brushing against each other in the wind. The guy finds it wild that a massive guy standing nearly 6'2" can walk while making such an insanely light noise. Suddenly, the curator's eyes narrow as he notices the ghost seems fixated on something very specific in the room. To his surprise, the mysterious entity is just standing there, intently studying one of the grand artworks in the hall. He knows the items displayed there are dangerous, feeling surprised that the intelligent being is just looking without touching anything. Sung-woon wonders if the ghost genuinely appreciates classical art, or if he's just passing the time to distract himself. The hunter starts getting tense, worrying the creature might be scouting for some valuable magic item to steal from the gallery. Beneath the dark hood, the mysterious guy's serene face continues observing the relics with a calm look, free of any malice. But disaster strikes when the silver curator drops his guard for a second, accidentally making a tiny noise behind the pillar. In the blink of an eye, the ghost snaps around, and their eyes lock in a direct, unavoidable stare. In that instant, the hooded being's eyes seem to turn into a terrifying dark abyss, brimming with chaotic energy. The curator drops to his knees on the floor, completely paralyzed, and breaking into a cold sweat under a crushing mental pressure. A creepy purple mist begins swirling in the guy's mind, making him question what kind of freakish power is acting on him. He feels trapped in a dark mental space that simultaneously glows with an inexplicably intense magical aura. At the core of this endless, terrifying void, the guy senses something colossal lurking deep in the shadows. The curator feels a divine presence that fills him with raw awe and fear, completely unable to grasp the source of such power. Desperate and practically gasping for air, the hunter reaches out his hand to guard against the overwhelming illusion invading his mind. When the pressure finally eases up, the guy realizes the hooded being simply turned his back and vanished into the hall. Panting and shaking from fear, the silver curator tries to catch his breath after barely surviving that terrifying encounter. He scrambles up off the floor, set on finding out where the ghost went, and sprints toward the spot where the painting was hung. The guy runs frantically through the hallways, heart in his mouth, fearing something far worse might go down in the private gallery. He arrives out of breath in front of the display wall, focusing all his attention on the golden frame to see if the ghost returned. To his total shock, Gio's portrait is sitting right where it belongs, with the painted guy sleeping peacefully as if nothing happened. The curator flashes a nervous smile, realizing the creature used his own canvas to hide and slip away from his investigation. He is scared out of his mind that he might have triggered the rage of an apocalyptic-level monster by sticking his nose where it didn't belong. And just like that, shrouded in mystery and panic, the first official day of investigation into Gio's portrait comes to an end. Inside the painting, Gio flops onto the ground, exhausted in his cute potato state, sighing in relief for managing to slip away from that mess. The guy wonders why that silver-haired human was hiding behind the vase, spying on his peaceful stroll. He starts thinking maybe the intruder was terrified of him, which is why he hid behind the pillar in such a timid way. Gio sadly remembers that all the gallery staff he bumped into so far always sprinted away in pure panic the moment they saw him. He worries that his sudden retreat back into the painting might have looked like cowardice to the guy in glasses. The guy decides to meditate for a bit to try appearing as harmless as possible, preventing fresh misunderstandings from ruining his peace. While he tries to unwind, a cute three-eyed bunny hops over and starts sniffing its creator's knee super endearingly. Gio hangs out there chilling on the grass with his little critters, wondering if that gray-haired guy will actually return to talk to him. Deep down, he feels that mysterious guy will show up again, trying to gently pet the small rabbit beside him. But the bunny dashes off the moment he tries to touch it, leaving poor Gio bummed out over how much wild animals keep rejecting him. Gio clenches his hand tight, dreaming of the day he'll have a fluffy pet that genuinely wants to receive his affection. Suddenly, the guy's eyes shine brightly, as if he senses someone approaching his hideout. Meanwhile, in the real world, the blank canvas remains right there on the easel, waiting to reveal what's next in the investigation. The second day of investigation into Gio's mysterious portrait officially kicks off with his painting perfectly presented on the wall. Curator Yu Sung-woon tiptoes in, totally stunned as he stares at the golden frame first thing in the morning. He just stands there in absolute silence, staring at the portrait with that classic "I have zero clue what's happening" face. The hunter feels a massive wave of relief, seeing the ghost didn't split for good, prepping himself to finally begin the real work. He knows full well that the things he witnessed last night prove that portrait isn't your average run-of-the-mill dangerous monster. Sung-woon knows the secret now is to figure out and strictly follow the specific rules controlling that artwork's behavior. His ultimate goal is to grasp the true nature of the mysterious entity to see if there's any shot at peaceful coexistence on Earth. But the guy admits to himself that just standing there locking eyes with the painting feels like it's draining his energy completely. He recalls that after the Great Catastrophe, certain monsters could only be beaten if people unlocked the entire backstory behind them. Since attempts rarely worked on the first try, humanity had to thoroughly study the creatures to stand a chance at survival. Out of nowhere, Gio's painting takes the initiative, asking super politely if the hunter would care to have a quick chat with him. Sung-woon flashes a friendly little smile, answering instantly that he'd love to chat with the mysterious entity residing in the frame. This skill of having friendly chats with dangerous monsters is one of the ultimate secrets to human survival nowadays. Seeing the positive response, Gio gets super touched, starting to think the silver-haired hunter is the absolute best person ever. The dark-haired guy gets all soft inside, seeing that even after that initial scare, the human still wants to talk so gently. He's genuinely blown away by the fact that the curator doesn't show an ounce of fear while chatting with a bizarre talking portrait. Sung-woon offers a sincere apology for what went down yesterday, and Gio finds that level of manners downright amazing. Gio reflects that in a world packed with skyscraper-sized monsters, a talking portrait is actually a pretty normal thing to see. The canvas says with ultimate chill that there's zero need to apologize for that, and the guy thanks him big time for the kindness. The friendly vibe continues until the portrait decides to cut straight to the point, asking for the light-haired hunter's name. Sung-woon gets tense, wondering if this conversation is following the exact same lethal pattern that hit the other 17 people. He knows full well that in magic contracts capable of binding souls, the most valuable and dangerous piece of info is one's true name. Even knowing the risk of getting roped into a bizarre contract, he bets on the rules shown by the frame, trusting nothing bad will happen. The hunter decides to risk it all with total class, finally revealing his true name is Yu Sung-woon. The portrait repeats his name softly, following up right away by mentioning the guy seems packed with curious questions to ask. Sung-woon gives a slight smirk, confirming he has tons of doubts, and asks if the person who made eye contact with him yesterday was him. He asks straight up if the mysterious person with dark, empty eyes he ran into last night was truly Gio. To the hunter's absolute surprise, the canvas owns up to it without a second of hesitation, leaving the guy stunned by such honesty. Sung-woon seizes the moment, asking if that means he can step out of the frame on his own, and Gio confirms he can. The portrait ghost puts on that totally calm face of someone who has zero to hide about his late-night strolls. Gio notices the gray-haired guy is looking all clumsy, and the hunter realizes in frustration that he left his shock written all over his face. He admits he was floored, seeing a mythical entity hand over valuable info without showing a shred of doubt or mistrust. The portrait simply answers innocently that he decided to tell him everything for the simple reason that the hunter asked. Sung-woon grows thoughtful, questioning what would happen if he were asking those questions with bad or shady intentions. But the painting firmly states that assumption is a total lie, locking his deep eyes onto the guy. Gio explains he only answered because he knows he's a good, polite person, asking if that explanation is good enough. The curator swallows hard, realizing the creature holds the freakish power to sense people's goodness and categorize them instantly. He starts theory crafting in fear about what would go down if the frame ran into someone truly evil. While the hunter experiences a mini existential crisis, the portrait casually asks if he has any more questions to get off his chest. The guy snaps out of his deep thoughts fast, confirming he does have one more super important point to clear up. He asks if the ghost handing out delicious snacks in the dead of night throughout the gallery is also Gio himself. Sung-woon picks up on an awkward silence in the air, finding it weird that the painting is taking so long to drop an answer. The portrait echoes the word ghost, and the hunter worries if the guy in the frame got offended by being called that nickname. Anxious about ruining the friendly atmosphere, the hunter steps closer to the frame, offering sincere apologies if he offended the entity. Gio gets thoughtful in his cute potato state, understanding the curator's perspective, accepting that a talking frame really seems haunted. But right after, the guy's expression inside the piece changes completely as he brings up a super crucial detail about his existence. He reveals directly and seriously that he never actually passed away in his life, shooting down any idea of him being a real ghost. Yu Sung-woon gets intrigued, wondering if the being was born as a painting, asking why he wanders the gallery hallways. Geo shares he was just curious after turning into a painting out of nowhere and getting transported to that place without any explanation. The guy confesses the rare artworks displayed in those fancy halls caught his eye during his late-night walks. He was also super curious to learn what kind of people worked there and what kind of lives each of those staffers lived. The mysterious youth wanted to learn their names and tastes, even while living in a world that flipped upside down so drastically. Geo vents that when you're all alone, it's natural to look for someone to chat with, and he just wanted to interact without getting burned alive. Sung-woon finds the guy's blunt tone chilling when showing interest in human life, something typical of other monsters he's fought. But the young man in the painting breaks the tension by saying his interest spikes when he meets someone extremely polite like the hunter. The curator gives a friendly smirk, realizing his mysterious chat buddy seems to have a massive preference for well-mannered folks. Geo says the staffers are way better chat partners than that weird red boss, making the hunter instantly recognize his employer. The guy in the frame puts on a sour face, complaining that the red boss is way too much of a talker for his personal taste. The curator makes a hilarious face, mentally agreeing that the boss talks so excessively it's hard to even squeeze a word in. The gray-haired guy tries his best not to burst out laughing, realizing his own boss ended up on the painting's blacklist. He finally gets why the guildmaster had zero info on the piece, since Geo found him rude and straight up ignored him. The curator apologizes for his boss's weirdness, but Geo says it's fine because deep down, the loud red guy doesn't seem evil. Sung-woon notes the creature isn't hostile toward bad manners as long as the person is good, but gets shocked seeing him read an S-rank hunter. The guy gets more and more intrigued, staring at that glowing frame, wondering what kind of powerhouse creature is standing before him. The young man in the painting notices the curator's distraction, patiently asking if he still has any more doubts to clear up. The hunter takes the chance to ask if the being can see everything outside even when the painting has its eyes closed on the wall. He wants to know if he was being watched the whole time, trying to crack what the monster's real motive is for keeping up the chats. Geo explains simply that he wasn't watching anyone, just enjoying the passing view like looking out a bus window. The guy shares he only opens his painted eyes when he feels like talking, something he verified using a mirror he found at school. Outside of those specific chat moments, the painting keeps its eyes closed so he can just watch everything safely from inside. Geo continues his train of thought, explaining casually that being stuck inside a frame doesn't leave him with many choices. He says he has no option but to watch his surroundings, wrapping up by saying it's just plain fun to watch moving pictures. The curator feels a drop of cold sweat trickle down his neck, hearing such a simple explanation that carries a heavy mystery. He realizes with a slight chill that to the creature in the frame, the real exhibit in the gallery isn't him, but the humans themselves. The gray-haired guy lets out an awkward laugh, admitting Geo's blunt honesty and direct tone caught him off guard this time. The mysterious guy justifies himself, stating with total composure that he was just keeping up the proper manners he learned. He questions if a real human shouldn't always maintain good manners in any chat, leaving the hunter deep in thought. The silver guy gives a genuine smile, admitting to himself that the weird chat turned out to be an awesome experience. With great mutual understanding between both sides, the second day of exploring Geo's portrait wraps up on a super high note. The phone screen ticks to exactly 9 in the morning, showing business hours and the guild's normal routine are about to kick off. Suddenly, the office doors burst open as someone screams in panic, warning the master that a dangerous situation is unfolding. But the guild master couldn't care less, casually sipping his tea in total style from his fancy leather chair. The red-haired boss flashes his classic arrogant smirk, asking with ultimate chill what could possibly be that dangerous. Yu Sung-woon rushes into the office clutching his metal briefcase, shouting that the danger has to do with that new portrait. The guy explains to the boss that this creature is totally different from all known monsters that choke people with fake kindness. He drops the most mind-boggling detail of the entire sweep, sharing that the being living inside that golden frame views himself as human. The gray-haired guy considers that even if the creature seems peaceful daily, it's impossible to know if he genuinely believes his own humanity. He warns with extreme gravity that if a single thing goes wrong, the ultimate fallout of this relationship could be catastrophic. The hunter explains the artwork judges people by his own moral standards, and there's no predicting his reaction to someone he deems bad. Sung-woon suggests handing the canvas over to Association Research, but backs off right away, knowing his boss's stubborn reaction. The master finds the tale fascinating, ordering the guy to keep talking to Geo to build a close friendship and introduce them later. The red-haired boss adds it would be embarrassing to get snubbed again, ordering the curator to quickly find out everything the portrait likes. The hunter feels awkward about the weird request, but accepts the assignment professionally since it's his job after all. The boss laughs at his staff's sass, and the guy jokes back that it only happens because the master only hires people with that exact attitude. The guy knows full well the master's habit of collecting rare things wasn't limited to magic artifacts, but included all gallery staff too. He recalls the boss only hired elite rank hunters, making Geo's ability to shake such strong minds even more impressive. This passive skill of the painting proves the rank and caliber of the soul living inside are colossal and packed with hidden power. The guy tells the boss he'll keep up the daily reports, but warns it's going to be tough uncovering Geo's true nature anytime soon. The master nods and dismisses him, but the guy walks out thinking his crazy boss might just be trying to trigger the end of the world for fun. And so time flies fast until we officially kick off day 3 of investigations into Geo's mysterious portrait. The curator pulls up a chair to sit comfortably in front of the painting, deciding to ask the guy if he doesn't get super lonely. The artwork responds short, blunt, and straight to the point, stating he doesn't feel lonely at all staying in that isolated forest space. The silver-haired hunter gives an awkward smile, offering sincere apologies if that personal question crossed the line. He explains that since only staff come down here, he assumed the guy's desire to step out at night was driven by loneliness. The young man answers that he actually prefers empty places without people, making the hunter ask if he feels awkward chatting. Geo says that's not it, explaining he talked so much in his past that he always dreamed of a future where he didn't have to say a word to anyone. The guy reveals his ultimate wish was simply to find a peaceful spot where he didn't have to bother talking to others. He really wanted to live in a free space where he wouldn't be tied down to exhausting social obligations. The youth sought a quiet sanctuary where he no longer had to care deeply about all the pressures and headaches of the world around him. He wraps up, saying he always wanted a quiet nook like this, assuring the magical forest inside the painting fits his wish perfectly. The curator listens in absolute silence, ending up asking the most crucial question, wanting to know if the guy was truly human before. Geo answers right away that he is still human, leaving the hunter flustered and stammering to fix his slip-up. The curator clarifies he meant whether he was a regular human before getting trapped in the canvas, and the mysterious guy confirms he was. The hunter nods thoughtfully, remembering human-looking monsters that appeared in the world usually fall into 2 distinct categories. The first category includes creatures born as pure monsters that evolved to the point of taking on human form. The second category consists of people who started out as normal humans, but transformed into monsters due to some freak incident. He concludes Geo's case fits the second option perfectly, explaining why the mysterious youth still considers himself human to this day. The guy finds it fascinating because usually monsters holding memories of their human past are consumed by pure hatred and grudge. But unlike all the dangerous creatures he's faced before, the youth in the portrait appears to be in a state of deep, pure peace. However, the curator senses this calmness isn't necessarily good, feeling more like the gloomy silence of a funeral. He watches the painted guy closely, thinking to himself that all that stillness makes the youth resemble the very image of death. To change the subject, the curator asks if he doesn't get bored sometimes, and Geo admits he does, making the guy ask how he passes time. The youth in the artwork says he usually cooks a nice meal to pass time, shocking the hunter who wonders how a painting can eat. Geo insists he really likes eating, and the hunter breaks into a cold sweat trying to process the weird info of a hungry painting. He covers his mouth in fear, desperately praying the monster's menu doesn't include human meat from the facility's staff. Even fearing he'll sound rude, the hunter musters up courage and asks directly how exactly the guy pulls off his magical meals. To his relief, Geo explains he actually cooks everything himself, just needing to picture the desired dish in rich detail. Using the power of thought, he gathers all necessary ingredients, prepares everything carefully, and gets the food ready to cook. Then he uses his magical kitchen tools to finish the dish, creating a delicious meal that looks fit for a high-end restaurant. He wraps up saying with total seriousness that he's just a normal human, finding it weird that the hunter asks such silly questions. The curator stays quiet, thinking this bizarre mind-cooking explanation makes the youth look even less human than he realizes. The guy in the painting lets out a soft sigh, glad he finally made himself understood by his new morning chat buddy. We then discover the first main rule of the portrait, revealing that absolutely everything Geo draws inside that space comes to life. With the frame interaction rule and the forest of pure kindness, Geo wonders if the curator is curious about his power. He admits he was also curious to test his own limits inside the canvas and see how far his creations can actually go. In truth, all he has so far is a super basic sketch of a fruit tree drawn with black strokes on that wooden easel. The youth decides it would be a great idea to ask the hunter for a little help to run a simple test and prove his wild power. The curator gets super curious, asking right away how this test works, being informed the experiment will need a tiny bit of help. The mysterious guy in the painting warns with his serene gaze that Hunter Yu Sung-woon can also help him have a fun moment there. The guy gets suspicious, asking what fun he's talking about, mentally picturing dark pacts involving lifespans or blood sacrifices. But to his shock, the painting makes a super silly, harmless request, asking the curator to draw a red apple on the canvas. Sung-woon is taken aback, double-checking if he's supposed to scribble directly onto the valuable painting, getting a calm yes from Geo. The curator holds the brush with shaky hands, admitting that ruining such a perfect masterpiece with silly scribbles feels painful. Geo notices the art tools in the curator's hand, asking surprised if the gray-haired guy usually carries art supplies everywhere. The curator shares he always tries to stay prepared, carrying various handy items since you never know what will go down in this crazy gallery. He genuinely believes being ready for any weird, unexpected scenario is always the best move during his missions. The guy thinks that if he didn't have those art tools handy right now, things might have taken a super dangerous turn right there. He looks fondly at the rough red apple sketch he just painted directly over the fabric of the valuable, mysterious artwork. The curator feels awkward, straight up admitting to the guy that his red apple drawing isn't exactly a masterwork of beauty, but Geo thanks him for the kindness, and to everyone's shock, extends his own hand out of the painting and grabs that freshly drawn apple. The silver-haired hunter stands completely frozen and speechless, witnessing that mind-bending scene happen right before his eyes. Back inside the canvas, Geo brings the red apple to his face and takes a big bite, making a classic fresh fruit crunch noise in the air. The light-haired guy's eyes pop open in absolute shock, seeing the monster just ate a rough drawing made of cheap paint. Yes, the guy in the painting actually ate the drawing the curator just made, proving any scribble in there turns into real stuff for him. The curator falls into a total trance, mentally repeating that the creature just snacked on a fruit made purely of brushstrokes. His heart starts pounding insanely fast, while he desperately tries to process all that unbelievable magical weirdness. The guy admits that in his entire long career as an experienced hunter and curator, he had never seen anything even remotely close to that. Meanwhile, Geo chews peacefully, praising the flavor, saying the fruit is perfectly ripe with an absolute heavenly aroma. The guy stares at the brush, surprised, noticing a painting made with cheap ink actually managed to develop such real taste and smell. Geo explains that since he's a human residing in a canvas, by that same logic he can pull off crazy feats within the limits of that painting. The youth reveals that on days when he's feeling too lazy to cook, he simply draws a fully cooked meal and eats it effortlessly. But the curator stands there thinking to himself that a regular human definitely couldn't pull off something as absurd as that. The guy in the frame picks up on the hunter's shocked face, asking with total innocence if he finds all this super fascinating. The hunter confirms he does, and Geo says he understands, promising to return the big favor of drawing that tasty red apple. The curator grows super suspicious of that promise, wondering with a bit of dread what kind of bizarre surprise awaits him this time. On the flip side, Geo thinks about how sweet the hunter is for going along with his silly request to draw a fruit without even knowing him well. He shares that right after opening his eyes inside the painting. He decided to paint several gems just to test the bounds of his gifts. The guy explains that by grinding those shiny gemstones into ink and using them directly on his easel canvas, all that magic ink and the artwork itself gained such a bizarre energy that they seemed to behave like a living creature. The youth mixed all those glowing colors with his brush, creating magical effects that straight up defied the normal laws of the real world. In that dimension, Geo felt he could create anything, so he decided to test what would happen if he blended his gifts with outside reality. And to prove it, the young painter begins mysteriously drawing the silver curator's own face directly onto the canvas. Gio watches the result with his thoughtful gaze, looking like someone who was expecting that exact mysterious occurrence. Suddenly, a system screen pops up out of nowhere, revealing a reward contract with a 6-day deadline for the silver curator. A massive glow forms right in the middle of the magic panel, signaling the reward materialization process was successfully triggered. And to the guy's amazement, an insanely shiny magic gem begins sliding smoothly out of the golden border of Gio's portrait. The hunter reaches out his hand, startled, managing to catch that gleaming gemstone that radiates insanely powerful magic energy. The young man's painting states calmly and directly that the beautiful shiny gem is the reward for the drawn apple favor. He scans the crystal structure of the jewel in complete shock, realizing the guy actually created that rare item using nothing but paintbrushes. The curator fixes his eyes on the magic stone reflected in his blue eyes, wondering what kind of powerful mineral he's holding. Gio admits he doesn't know either, but explains the mineral must have been mined from such extreme depths of the earth that it's still super hot. He shares the object rested near the fiery core of the planet, joking it's warm because it reminds him of an old friend. But the silver curator stands frozen in the shadows, jewel in hand, reaching a final, ultimate conclusion about everything there. He gains absolute certainty that the painting is no simple monster, wrapping up day 3 of exploration with this massive discovery. The next day, the guildmaster analyzes the shiny jewel with deep focus, thoughtfully repeating the term origin that the guy mentioned. The silver-haired curator confirms seriously that this is the only logical conclusion based on all his detailed observations so far. He recalls the origin is a transcendent entity that governs the balance of the universe and creates the laws of existence itself. It functions practically like a supreme, absolute system, considered by many to be the true god of all gods. And the dungeons that spawned on Earth 30 years ago are actually dimensional shards born directly from the power of that great origin. From those dungeons come all the dangerous monsters in the world, this being the big hidden truth only gardeners fully grasp. He explains to the boss that while monsters come from dungeons, a true child of the origin is conceived directly from supreme power itself. The guy claims those two things are entirely different, but points out Gio showed himself to be a being distinct from both concepts. The red-haired boss stays fixated on the shiny stone while listening to the curator raise another crucial point about Gio's feats. He wraps up revealing the mysterious guy can create entirely new lives independent of himself, closing out day 6 of research. The curator makes a shocked face, realizing his boss is listening to the whole detailed breakdown with intense interest. Gio introduces the tiny glowing magic birds as his new family, saying he found the process fun, so he created a bunch of them. The glowing blue little creatures fly around happily, filling the entire space with super positive energy. The hunter is amazed watching the little critters actually fly, asking stunned if the guy painted every single one by himself. Gio confirms he's drawn nearly 100 birds, joking they are so noisy they'd make an unbearable racket if they had real voices. The youth explains that sometimes all those magical critters join up in a giant swarm just to bring a beautiful crystal lake to life. He shares laughing that the small birds love decorating themselves by stashing tiny fruits inside their bodies, each with unique tastes. The silver curator listens to the cute descriptions, and suddenly his expression turns super serious under a shadow of mystery. He questions if those magic birds possess real souls, highlighting that creating life like that goes far beyond any normal monster level. The mysterious guy in the frame just turns his gaze away reflectively, answering he constantly asks himself that exact same question. The curator considers that pure origin offspring possess zero ego or consciousness, being totally unable to hold a healthy chat like this. To him, the guy is without a doubt a painting, and simultaneously a legit human possessing the surreal ability to warp reality itself. The guy doesn't feel a single drop of divine presence coming from Gio, meaning the youth in the golden frame definitely isn't a real god either. The hunter asks if Gio could paint deeper things like destiny, past memories, or even bring a real person to life. He thinks that if the youth truly carries that absurd level of omnipotence all by himself, then he is something vastly greater. Gio answers calmly that it might be possible, but assures directly that he has zero interest in pulling off such craziness. He explains that just thinking about creating a real human makes him uncomfortable, feeling that's a task reserved for the divine. The youth humbly adds that deep down, he doesn't view himself as someone so incredible or powerful as to play God on earth. He politely asks the hunter to never view him as someone so extraordinary again, reinforcing it would be way better if everyone thought that way. The light-haired guy stands frozen in the hall, absorbing that sincere, humble request coming from such a powerful entity. The curator accepts the request warmly, assuring the guy he'll hold on to that advice dearly for future chats. Back at the office, the silver curator asks the master seriously if he really has no intention of handing the painting over to the guild. The red-haired master gives a slight smirk, saying right now the only thing he can actually grasp is the story behind the canvas. He confesses he has zero clue about the guy's soul power or his true role in the whole mystery of the origin. The curator insists that if Gio's power is incomprehensible for humanity, then the association would be the best prepared place to analyze it. The guildmaster gives an ironical smile, calling the guy by his curator title to launch into a sassy sermon on the topic. He approaches the office file cabinet, asking if the young man forgot the main deal they made when he got hired. The boss strikes a dramatic pose, reminding him out loud he never cared for weapons of war, and his sole desire was always true art. He points emphatically, assuring that this passion for collecting rare relics was the only reason he founded the whole guild. The redhead adds, laughing, that he might have pride as an art collector, but admits that as a hunter, he holds zero pride. The master explains, no true collector expects a great artwork to serve merely to ward off hauntings or bring sweet dreams. He stresses that a legit collector's greatest thrill is simply unraveling and enjoying the fascinating history the piece carries. The redhead concludes his only wish in life is to preserve that marvelous story with his own hands, without outside interference. He looks at the guy with a mysterious smile, assuring that trying to stop upcoming events is completely impossible to do today. While the serious talk happens in the office, Gio's beautiful, mysterious painting keeps glowing alone on the gallery's massive wall. The master reflects that although Gio is strong like a natural disaster, he can talk with humans and thankfully carries no bad intent. In his calm dimension, Gio stays focused on rolling tiny golden food balls, like he's just prepping another tasty sweet treat. The red-haired boss says finding such a powerful yet friendly creature is a stroke of colossal luck and an impossible miracle. He insists that regardless of the guy's true nature, they can't be foolish enough to waste such a rare golden opportunity. The redhead reminds him that from the moment the artwork was put up at auction, its existence was bound to become public knowledge. The gray-haired hunter catches his boss's plan, asking if he decided to move early to prevent a worse catastrophe from breaking out. The flamboyant boss in the white suit gives another confident smirk, assuring his employee he sees way past surface appearances. He concludes that if the youth in the painting genuinely believes he's a normal human, then that's the exact respect they must show him. Back inside the frame, the dark-haired guy inspects a small, cute golden creature swimming inside a clear jar with curiosity. The little floating golden critter lets out a cute squeak, glowing brightly amidst the warm, magical energy of the room. The redhead jokes a hunter shouldn't be so narrow-minded, telling him to open his mind to view things on a whole new scale. The gray-haired guy listens attentively, starting to agree with the idea that Gio really seems like a gentle soul. The Red Master laughs again, commenting on how awesome Gio is for holding zero grudges even when people end up bothering him. As we view the painting of the little cabin in the forest, the boss asks the guy to imagine how pure the soul of someone like that must be. He wraps up, reminding him the guy acts with extreme courtesy, respects everyone, and fears hurting others so much he never forces his rules. The curator grows thoughtful, questioning if Gio actually feels that fear of hurting others, since, to such a powerhouse, humans must look like ants. The master insists the guy is gentle, but the curator counters right away, reminding him he hasn't spoken to Gio a single time to be so sure. The redhead brags proudly that this is the level of intuition required of a guild leader who gets everything with just a glance. He orders the young man to stop trying to read Gio's mind to avoid irritating the monster, telling him to just be a good chat buddy. The master finishes his unusual request, telling the curator he should also take the painting guy out for fresh air walks once in a while. The silver guy stands in absolute disbelief at what he just heard, asking dead seriously if his boss is actually for real. The red master simply nods back casually, confirming the order is to be taken completely seriously. The curator lets out a long sigh, humorously lamenting over stressing himself out for nothing as a responsible gallery employee. He gives a slight smirk, saying he'll fully trust his guildmaster's call and judgment to handle the situation. While the boss rests at his desk, two massive glowing eyes emerge in the background, reminding that he sees what normal humans can't. The red boss smiles confidently, telling the curator to deliver the absolute best service the collector's gallery can offer. And so the silver curator walks through the city's illuminated streets at night, clutching his briefcase filled with secrets. He lets out a relieved sigh, thinking how great it is not having to hand over a creature that chats so nicely to the association. The guy recalls with a slight chill that the organization's experiments and research on monsters are practically a form of abuse. Truth is, all his deep concern stems from a simple reason. Yu Sung-woon is fundamentally a gardener class hunter. He explains that an origin entity picks a person to care for it, and the chosen one becomes its gardener, dedicating their life with love. Since garden quality impacts dungeon difficulty, gardeners take pride in their work, forming deep bonds with the creatures. This affection and curiosity toward origin beings form the foundation of a gardener hunter's dedicated personality. On his way, he spots a neat street food stall selling fish-shaped pastries, thinking how rare it is to find those sweets nowadays. Suddenly, the guy recalls with a smile that the youth in the portrait stated crystal clear that he really loved eating tasty food. He remembers the master's advice about respecting Gio's humanity if he truly believes himself to be a regular person and not a monster. The guy decides he'll do whatever it takes to keep this friendly misunderstanding going as long as possible, just to guarantee Gio's peace. He returns to the gallery, holding the warm bag of street food, deciding to ask with deep curiosity how old young Gio actually is. The painting responds with his classic calm expression, revealing directly and bluntly that he is 29 years old. The silver curator lets out a light chuckle, realizing he's actually older than the guy in the painting, being 33 himself. Gio stares at the curator's face attentively, commenting candidly that the gray-haired guy looks surprisingly young. The curator play-acts drama, saying people always tell him he looks older, but that hurt, making the dark-haired guy try to explain. The young curator finds the situation hilarious, thinking how wild it is that an entity powerful enough to scare his boss is under 30. Gio asks why he's laughing, politely inquiring about curator Yu Sung-woon's real age without wanting to pry. The curator warmly reveals he's 33, and the guy in the frame compliments him, sincerely saying he looks much younger. The silver curator gets rosy cheeks, hiding his face behind the paper bag packed with fresh, warm pastries. Sung-woon finds it funny receiving such a compliment from an origin being, casually suggesting they don't need to speak so formally since he's older. He hands over the food bag as a gift, deciding to talk more casually while planning when to take the guy out for a stroll. And so we fast forward rapidly in our tale to officially kick off day 17 of investigations at the gallery. The hunter begins theory crafting that if such a powerful creature is called the origin, then the space they call the garden must be something else. He thinks the garden would be like part of the entity's own body, acting like its veins, heart, or eyes. The light-haired guy praises Gio's wild stories, but confesses with a smile that he finds the guy in the frame far more fascinating. He shares that tending a garden is such a tough job that many hunters die in the process, making it far from a chill career choice. The guy in the painting listens attentively, asking if people are always forced to follow the gardener path inevitably. The curator adjusts his glove, explaining it's not a personal choice, admitting that even working at the gallery, he can never stop being a gardener. He hands over a seed packet the youth had requested, and Gio's hand reaches out of the canvas again to grab the gift, thanking him super cutely. The silver curator watches the scene, amazed, as it's the first time in his life seeing just a single hand reach out of a frame so weirdly. Gio holds the seed packet carefully, asking his light-haired friend if his daily life as a gardener is super tough. The curator walks backward through the gallery, briefcase in hand, answering with a soft smile that it's a bit tricky but totally manageable. He reveals that whenever he closes his eyes, he can picture a massive, gorgeous, snow-capped mountain range surrounded by colossal glaciers. He says the beauty of that frozen place can captivate anyone, proudly admitting that owning a whole garden to oneself is marvelous in the end. The dark-haired guy listens to the description of the mountain scenery attentively, looking touched by his friend's feelings. As we watch the birds flying around the cozy wooden cabin inside the painting, Gio answers softly that he can understand his friend. He strokes the small, cute, glowing golden critter in his hands, saying he shares that exact same affection and love for his little companions. The silver curator gives his most genuine, happy smile upon hearing that the youth in the portrait shares the same warm feelings. The curator nicely asks if Gio would like to step out of the frame someday, offering to guide him through the outside world with pleasure. Gio grows thoughtful in the middle of his forest, holding the golden critter, wondering if that would be like a trip to see the human world. Inviting a primordial being out for a casual stroll through the city is definitely not the kind of offer anyone should make without double thinking. Especially since nobody knows for sure what Gio truly is, let alone how reality itself will react when this entity decides to wander around. But since stopping it from happening is impossible anyway, it's way better to find out what will go down before things spin out of control. Back at the gallery, Yu Sung-woon says Gio must know almost nothing about the outside, doubling down on the invite by promising to show him everything personally. Gio reflects that the time has finally come to re-enter society, accepting Yu Sung-woon's offer with his usual chill vibe. The guy in the frame seems super interested in the idea, asking the curator directly when would be the best time for their trip. Meanwhile, the tiny golden gem critter glows on the floor, commenting that its daddy is deep in thought, trying to decide what to do. Gio starts tilling the soil with a hoe, remembering with a slight worry that people outside seemed terrified of him in the past. He theories his paintings come to life out there, and his own appearance must look weird and unsettling to limited human perception. He recalls staffers staring at him like they saw an unknown monster, giving the distinct vibe of existing in different image resolutions. Even if that visual gap caught Gio off guard the first time, he confesses deep down it wasn't really a bad feeling. Since he already promised to step out with the curator, he decides to find a way to fix that resolution gap so he won't scare his new friend. The dark-haired youth sighs, wiping sweat from his forehead with his gardening glove, showing that farm work wears out even him. He proudly admires his newly made veggie bed, recalling his grandma saying that those who don't work hard in the field don't deserve to eat. A cute mental image of his grandma giving a thumbs up pops into his mind, leaving the golden bird super confused by the noise he just made. Gio pampers his little critter, saying it already does its part by just being a cute little thing, so it doesn't need to worry about hard labor. He admits it was a shock that the critter evolved to the point of speaking, but since it's warm and has a unique color, it deserves a name. The guy walks in boots through his pretty yard, holding the golden bird, relieved to see his companion really liked that news. Gio holds the glowing critter with his gloved hands, beginning to brainstorm what would be the ideal name to crown his adorable buddy. He puts on an insanely serious, concentrated face for such a simple task, looking like he's about to decide the fate of all humanity. Gio himself realizes the name he thought of was terrible, joking that sometimes Daddy talks nonsense, leaving the water critter super surprised. Then he suggests the name Honey due to the sweet golden color of the bird's body, which seems to glow with pure joy at the idea. The guy comments that the bird is extremely generous for not hating the silly name he picked while admiring the cabin's peaceful view. He decides it's time to finish those landscape paintings, promising they'll take a super cozy nap together once all the work is done. Holding his paintbrush with fierce determination, the young artist prepares to make the first strokes and bring another scene to life. Gio stands in his sunlit studio, making soft strokes on the massive canvas depicting a rough sea packed with colossal dark water waves. The artist's hand glides with mastery across the canvas, blending shades of blue and green to give mind-blowing realism to the water's motion. Suddenly, a system panel pops up out of nowhere, scanning for a dimension matching the realistic sea painting Gio just finished. Bizarre images of dark outlines, red flames, and sharp-toothed monsters flash on the screen, hinting terrifying things are being scanned. Within seconds, the system search wraps up with total success, and a message alerts on screen that a matching dimension was found. The ocean canvas begins radiating an intense magical white glow, illuminating the entire studio as if opening a real portal right there. After putting so much effort into the artwork, the youth finally flops onto his wooden bed, falling fast asleep wrapped in his cozy black blanket. Day breaks beautifully around his wooden cabin, with small glowing creatures flying happily over the calm lake and green grass. Gio slowly wakes up as sunbeams hit his face, opening his eyes with that classic laziness of someone who just had a deep sleep. He gets a massive scare coming face to face with a giant floating blue screen, asking him to check the new system notifications. Sitting on the bed with the blanket up to his legs, the guy gets super confused by all those glowing alerts messing with his peace early on. One notification displays the rough sea painting he finished yesterday, now officially named by the system as The Breathing Sea. He reads the title super confused, seeing weird names like Breathing Sea, Animal Kingdom, and City of the Void floating on screens. The dark-haired youth finally gets the picture, realizing the system assigned names to all the landscape paintings he finished last night. He discovers painting landscapes allows him to discover new dimensions, wondering if this weird stuff is something a normal human should do. Cute bird Honey lands by surprise on his shoulder, glowing bright, bringing a bit of joy to his owner's confused wake-up. With the yellow critter on his shoulder, the guy gives a thumbs up, humorously concluding that since it's fun, there's zero problem. He pets the bird, laughing, thinking the system must have realized how bad he is with names, robbing him of the chance to name his own art. The young artist stays thoughtful on the bed, staring at the blue screens, wondering what on earth compatible host and synchronization mean. The system displays a button to learn more, and Geo tells the AI to hurry up with explanations, since it seems to have awareness. The panel reveals this is a practical method created specifically to help the user understand unknown dimensions way easier. The screen explains that among all living beings in that targeted dimension, the one matching Geo himself will be picked as the compatible host. And with that host's consent, Geo can borrow their body and soul to travel and grasp that new dimension with much greater ease. Geo looks over the name list, like Giovanni and Argio, wondering if the system just picked anyone with the letters J-I-O in their name. He stays thoughtful, grumbling softly while holding little Honey, finding it bizarre that system criteria could be so random. He concludes that if it were just a name coincidence, the system wouldn't grant the compatible host title, so another major factor must exist. He theories the system picked the ideal person after checking compatibility, celebrating he'll never die of boredom with so many updates. Geo decides to analyze another screen, getting super confused, seeing the dimension named City of the Void flagged with a weird "does not exist" alert. The panel asks if he wants to register this non-existent dimension, and the guy wonders if he created a whole new world just with his painting. He clicks the yes option decisively, thinking his peaceful life is about to get way more exciting and action-packed from here on out. He tells Honey that life is fantastic, and he needs to make the most of it, joking that even if the critter stayed quiet, it should trust Daddy. Suddenly, a fresh alert pops up on screen with an electronic sound, catching the guy's attention with a valuable tip to fix the resolution issue. With the critter perched on his shoulder, Geo gives a smug smirk, realizing the path he chose to follow is truly the right one. The system tip reveals directly that to fix the visual resolution gap, he just needs to make proper use of Geo himself. Geo points his index finger toward the screen featuring Giovanni's portrait, using it as the perfect excuse to finally have some fun. In the blink of an eye, the young artist gets teleported to a totally different space, glowing in blue tones, looking like a lab lounge mix. Geo sarcastically complains that the dimensional delivery service was super sloppy, realizing with worry that his beloved Honey vanished in the process. The system screen pops up confirming he successfully synced with Giovanni's mindscape in the C dimension, and Geo thanks the alert with good humor. He checks out the place curiously, noting his compatible host's mindscape looks a lot like an old, mysterious lab packed with jars. The silence is broken when a slim man with long blonde hair and white robes walks calmly toward the old lab door. The handsome blonde youth turns with a serene, slightly gloomy look, revealing delicate features that grab Geo's attention right away. Geo lets out a soft gasp of surprise, staring up close at that mysterious man's face, catching something totally wild about his looks. He greets the stranger politely, while thinking in shock about how much that blonde guy's face looks exactly like his own. With a super warm smile and hand on his chest, the blonde man introduces himself nicely, revealing his name is Giovanni of House Bartlan. Geo offers a polite bow, introducing himself simply as Geo, while fascinated that he met his actual compatible person face to face. The dark-haired guy comments that they look super alike, thinking to himself that if he were a foreigner, he'd look just like that. Giovanni agrees with a gentle smile, softly commenting that the two of them likely share plenty of other similarities besides looks. Geo gestures modestly, waving his hand, candidly assuming that, unfortunately, he lacks the ability to pull off a smile as warm as that one. He confesses his lack of smiles caused plenty of misunderstandings in the past, making some people think he lost someone close in a tragedy. He recalls his teaching days drawing on the chalkboard, while scared students whispered, swearing he hid a dark, dangerous past. In reality, all that tough guy look was just hunger, as he spent the entire class thinking about dinner while waiting for the bell. Giovanni finds the story hilarious, sweetly saying that now that they're together, Geo will finally manage to flash warm smiles like his. The dark-haired youth stares at the handsome blonde, wondering if he could really smile that friendly just from the syncing process. Still, Geo prefers to be cautious, reminding his friend that syncing makes a person lose their body and soul, wanting to know if he truly consents. He asks straight up if Giovanni feels no fear or resentment, seriously warning that taking everything from someone to explore a world is theft. Giovanni responds with a calm, comforting smile that it isn't real theft, peacefully revealing he's actually been gone for a long time. He explains his soul returned to the sun and his body turned to dust, though admitting with sadness that his physical body was never buried. The blonde reveals with deep sorrow that his entire homeland and the place he lived were completely swallowed and destroyed by the sea. Gio stands completely floored by the tragic revelation, and Giovanni just nods, calmly confirming his old home met a terrible end in the sea. The dark-haired guy falls into total silence, grasping the weight of that massive tragedy that wiped out his new friend's life and world. Gio comments that that's a heavy story to lay on a newcomer, but Giovanni asks him to listen, and the guy agrees to hear him out attentively. The blonde youth says only mermaids remain in the depths, explaining their planet shrank like a game board, becoming a rule-bound dungeon. Gio instantly remembers hearing Yu Sung-woon talk a lot about dungeons being dimensions that spawned after the Great Cataclysm. Giovanni glows under a gorgeous golden light, explaining the dungeon concept was unknown to him, but he got it all hearing his new friend's name. As we watch the dark-haired guy floating upside down in the cosmic waters of that dimension, puzzle pieces begin to fit together. The blonde stresses that even looking so alike and sharing a name, they aren't the same person, just two distinct individuals sharing traits. It's like by a true twist of fate, they were born in different worlds boasting an absurd amount of matching physical traits. Giovanni glows intensely, prepping to merge his soul with Gio's, saying it can be viewed as a resurrection or reincarnation on his part. He promises to create unforgettable memories alongside his friend as they merge, poetically assuring he'll keep living in the origin this way. Gio stays thoughtful, repeating his blonde friend's words, wondering what exactly this origin stuff is that people and systems keep mentioning. The golden-haired youth gives a tender goodbye smile, peacefully revealing that even if the concept sounds weird, the guy already lives inside it. Gio wants to know if his cabin home is the origin itself, recalling hearing the term from humans, but Giovanni notes that's just Earth's term. The man wraps up explaining nobody actually knows the origin's true name, let alone what rules and true forms it possesses. The blonde youth says humbly he's just a soul answering the call, wishing to align completely with his new companion. He joins his hands respectfully, making one final sincere request for Gio to look after the sun god of his old world if possible. Gio points to his own chest with his index fingers, putting on a face of someone who understands zero of that divine mission. He asks, terrified, if he's supposed to babysit a god as a regular human, thinking that kind of responsibility is way too heavy a burden. Giovanni explains gods get forgotten without followers, and while the sun god won't vanish, he as a son can't help but worry. To ease the guy's mind, he explains the task is super simple. Just remember the deity and chat with it every now and then. By doing so properly, the young artist can even borrow a slice of the massive radiant power belonging to that solar deity. He solemnly swears this won't be a heavy load for Gio, and his life as a sun-forged priest will be super peaceful and chill. Gio summarizes the divine mission as just keeping a lonely senior company, accepting the job, joking he's done that charity work since college. Gio asks if he wants anything else, and Giovanni jokes if babysitting a god isn't enough, making the guy laugh, saying he's used to it. He recalls with good humor that for someone who lived out in the Gangwon-do Mountains, making senior smile is an absolute breeze. Giovanni stays silent, watching the dark-haired guy with a super calm look full of gratitude for finding such a great host. The young priest whispers the name Aria, while a mental image of a majestic, mysterious mermaid tale floats through Giovanni's mind. Hearing that name whispered with such gloom by his new friend, Gio repeats the word curiously, wanting to know who she is. He reveals Aria is the name of his beloved former student, begging with deep sorrow for Gio to put a final end to her life. Next, we see the sad view of an entire city submerged and forgotten in the dark ocean depths, packed with bubbles and hidden mysteries. Suddenly, the scene shifts back to the pretty wooden cabin in the forest, where warm sunbeams light up the green lawn. Cute golden bird honey appears resting super lazily on the table, glowing brightly with its lovely colored gems. Gio begins to wake up, sitting up slowly on the edge of his wooden bed, looking like he's still digesting all the info from that weird dream. Confirming none of it was just a dream, a system screen pops up with the mission to communicate with the sun god and end the mermaid. Little Honey puts on a super cute crying face, flapping its wings gently as if deeply worried about its beloved owner's health. Gio hugs his own body, shiver-shaking from cold, saying he's fine, though feeling a terrible flesh-ripping pain and unbearable frost. The system alerts that the assimilation rate is at a mere 1%, and the guy wonders whose agonizing freeze feeling that is. Suddenly, he sees a mental image of Giovanni hugging his body, realizing he's feeling the exact freezing pain that took his friend's life. An old memory shows the blonde sitting on beach sand, chatting calmly with a child and a mysterious fish-tailed creature. But the cute scene quickly flips into a nightmare, showing the creature with razor-sharp teeth attacking and dragging the man into the water. A detailed shot of a glowing blue eye shedding tears of desperation pops up, transmitting all the pain of that awful betrayal. Yet, even after enduring all that agonizing suffering in the deep, the young blonde priest still flashes a peaceful smile in his frame. Crying heavily curled up on his twin bed, the blonde guy softly vents that deep down, he regrets nothing of what happened in the past. Hands covering his tear-stained face, he reveals emotionally that despite all the pain of that tragedy, he was extremely happy. Back in the real world at night, a street lamp flickers down the road while someone comments seriously that the whole situation is terrible. An elegant woman in high heels walks toward the young guy in simple clothes, surprisingly commenting that sun shines everywhere there. Suddenly, the street lamp bulb goes out completely, leaving the alley pitch black, bringing a super tense, mystery-filled vibe to the chat. The full moon shines brightly in the night sky, illuminating the quiet city, which seems poised to host major events. Meanwhile, we observe a hand packed with luxury rings and brooches, typing super fast on a laptop keyboard inside a sleek office. It's the Collector's Guild Master, flashing his classic arrogant smirk as he plots his next moves to score rare relics. He publishes a new official memo for the staff regarding Gio, believing these safety rules will suffice as a preventive measure. The red-haired master shuts the laptop screen decisively, showing off his bright, sharp, predator-like yellow eye. Day breaks over the massive city with skyscrapers lit by the sun, and hunters begin gossiping about the mysterious notice they receive. Down the guild hallways, several elite hunters gather in small huddles to animatedly debate the contents of that fresh order. A long-haired guy and his female teammate look at a phone screen, commenting scared that they've never seen such a weird guild notice in their lives. They walk through the lobby discussing the mysterious black-cloaked man, suspecting he's the famous ghost from weeks-old rumors. Two young hunters read the memo details on a phone super tensely, asking in fear whether this Geo guy is human or not. One female hunter comments that the guild master would never joke around with official memos, completely lost on how to interpret it. Another red-haired woman tells her teammates the best move is to stop trying to decode the master's madness and just follow rules. Especially since it's obvious the black-cloaked guy isn't human, but the notice makes clear everyone should play dumb and act casual. The young green-haired hunter breaks into a cold sweat, nervous while listening, looking like he knows something super dangerous about this mystery. In another part of the room, a red-haired guy in a suit shows his phone screen to teammates with a super serious, worried face. The guy lets out a long, unmotivated sigh, realistically concluding that digging deeper into this mystery will just net him extra work. While teammates joke about scoring overtime pay, he counters unmotivated, saying he prefers not working so he can head home to walk his dog. The hunters comment the cloaked man is like Schrodinger's human, concluding the leader must have deemed it safe to leave him alone downstairs. The guard in sunglasses warns over the radio for everyone to just follow rules strictly to avoid any issue that could ruin their lives. Listening to teammate gossip, the guy with reddish hair just watches the whole scene silently with his usual unamused face. In the break room, a few hunters chat casually about the new notices while laughing and pointing at a computer screen. A curly-haired female hunter admits she's scared to death, but her teammate tries to calm her, saying the canvas is Yu Sung-woon's job. The guard in a cap watches the two walk off complaining, deciding it would be a great idea to buy the gallery curator's dinner real soon. Yu Sung-woon praises the staff, saying the master hired flawless employees, feeling relieved everything was resolved without conflict. The guildmaster bursts out laughing, saying he loves how his staff couldn't care less and hate extra work more than anything else. He leans back in his chair, laughing, commenting that now that boundaries are set, staff won't be rude to Gio, avoiding monster outbursts. The silver curator crosses his arms, thinking that while this avoids internal guild issues, the real danger remains outside. He reflects that due to Gio's overwhelming presence, they must make the public believe he's an S-rank hunter to prevent widespread panic. The guild master rests his hand on his chin, picturing the public reaction when a brand new S-rank hunter spawns out of nowhere. Yu Sung-woon recalls hunters nowadays are treated like big-shot celebs, and news about them spreads online in the blink of an eye. But instead of seeing that as a bad thing, the blue-eyed curator smirks, mysteriously claiming he thinks that's the best move. He explains an origin creature's danger level scales with the size of its legend, so pushing a human-level story will make things safer. The master finds the idea brilliant, trusting his gardener's word, mentioning he booked an exclusive hotel for tamer hunters as a precaution. He gives a sinister smile, promising to handle any damage Geo causes outside, ordering the curator to just ensure the guy has a nice stroll. Yu Sung-woon gets a drop of cold sweat running down his forehead, hearing the master talk so casually about containing a civilian massacre. Being tasked with accompanying Geo on this trip, the curator prays hard that the master's wild scenarios don't happen and the walk ends peacefully. The elevator doors open on the collector's gallery's 5th basement level, bringing that classic quiet, mysterious hallway vibe. Yu Sung-woon steps out of the elevator sighing low, thinking his only salvation now is placing full trust in Geo's good manners and gentleness. The echoing sound of firm, calm footsteps begins resonating down the long, dark basement hallway, signaling someone major is coming. Suddenly, we see Geo from behind wearing his massive black cloak, standing right in front of his golden frame like he was just waiting for his friend. Yu Sung-woon freezes mid-step, letting out a confused murmur, eyes wide upon noticing something super weird about the guy in front of him. The silver curator stands locked up, thinking to himself that the young man in the black cloak is radiating a totally different energy and presence. Geo turns around with an extraordinarily serene face, politely asking if he kept the curator waiting, receiving a quick, friendly response. Yu Sung-woon feels a chill run up his spine, realizing, terrified, that even Geo's calm, soft tone of voice seems to have changed drastically. That terrifyingly perfect tone from before and the awful crushing pressure of their rank gap had completely vanished. Geo picks up on his companion's surprise, casually explaining he had to take a few small steps before stepping out. The silver curator puts on an extremely confused face, hearing that vague answer, unable to grasp what those steps could be. Geo explains he adjusted himself so people wouldn't freak out seeing him, thinking satisfied that based on his friend's reaction, it worked great. 2 days after syncing with Giovanni, the guy appears lying on his bed petting the golden bird, mentioning his daddy feels great. He strokes the glowing body of little honey super tenderly, using his white gloves, while the pet makes noises of pure joy. He recalls meeting his compatible host Giovanni in the mindscape and securing his consent to launch this major connection. He remembers he needs to clear missions in that new world to achieve total assimilation, wondering if that's how it works. The dark-haired guy reflects that progress is way faster when Giovanni's sweet personality is active in his body, but there's a catch. Even without the active personality, the assimilation rate climbs solo to 4%, and Geo notes he's accessing memories he never lived. Facing the intense golden glow of the canvas, the youth feels like he's gradually remembering a past life completely lost to time. All of Giovanni's deep emotions and valuable memories are being gradually assimilated by Geo's body and mind over the hours. He realizes Giovanni was a gentle soul who held a soft charm capable of winning people over, being a man deeply ambitious for peace. A wonderful person who valued simple daily life alongside loved ones way above any other wealth or power in the world. The image of handsome, smiling Giovanni Bartland surrounded by gorgeous white flowers glows in Geo's mind, sealing the bond between these souls. He clutches his head, feeling both sides of his brain working separately, saying that while the blonde's trait leaks out, it's easy to regain control. Indeed, everything unfolded exactly as the system advised in the tip about applying Geo's essence to resolve visual issues. The room's silence gets broken by a super loud stomach rumble of hunger, leaving Geo and Little Honey with matching cute blank faces. Geo realizes that while synced, he feels extreme hunger, needs regular hours of sleep, and even needs to clean the bathroom. Sitting at the table eating super peacefully and human-like, he concludes that with these basic needs, he'll finally pass for a normal person. Back at the gallery, Geo alerts the curator he's super hungry because of that, asking with a gentle smile if they can head out to eat something. Yu Sung-woon gets startled by Geo's unusual sweetness, stammering a bit nervous while pointing down the hall to show his friend the exit. As the metal doors open, the silver curator thinks completely shocked that he still can't believe how much Gio's attitude changed. Yu Sung-woon puts on a face of extreme panic, realizing desperate that he was actually stressing over the completely wrong thing the whole time. The curator deduces shocked that Gio literally slashed his own divine presence just to avoid crushing normal humans with his power aura. He thinks silencing one's own power equals chopping off one's own limbs, asking worriedly if Gio is fine, and the guy answers, confused, that he's great. As the elevator glides down, the curator recalls with concern Gio's bizarre habit of giving valuable gifts, worrying about today. He fears shady people might try to slide in seeing Gio is rich, recalling the guildmaster loves relics above everything else. He concludes tensely that instead of worrying about Gio's actions, he should be more alert to the weird behavior of human hunters outside. A hunter with dark sunglasses and a cap watches Gio's massive black cloak from afar, creating instant suspicion in the lobby. The curator reflects worried that he should be ready to block any nosy idiot who decides to provoke a high-tier monster like Gio on the street. Gio admires the blue sky over massive skyscrapers, thinking about the old saying that even rivers and mountains change after 10 years pass. He recalls stepping out briefly from his isolation in the past, inside a box, reflecting that the current world looks infinitely more transformed. The busy street is packed with people wearing armor and glowing wings, making the urban landscape look super diverse and unique to Gio. He finds the view so fantastic that his past worries about resolution gaps start looking silly next to such giant weapons. In the crowd, an older hunter with a mustache glances at the duo sideways with a super serious look, showing their presence isn't flying under the radar. Other hunters with wings and giant glowing swords also turn around curiously to gossip about the odd pair that just passed them. The curator picks up on the stares, noting tensely that even having sealed almost all his power, Gio still radiates the aura of an A-rank hunter minimum. To dodge more trouble and curious eyes, Yu Sung-woon pulls Gio's cloak hood up, nicely asking the guy to keep his face covered. The curator points to the flying train crossing the skies, mentioning they'll use it to hit the restaurant, leaving the young artist amazed by the invention. Holding the hood of his black cloak, Gio marvels, wondering if human society could truly evolve this much in just 31 years. Yu Sung-woon reaches out his arm with his black glove, offering one of his credit cards for Gio to pay for public transit super easily. He hands over a fancy gold card with complete friendliness, mentioning the guy can use it to buy whatever he wants since it has no limit. Gio holds the shiny card with two shaky hands, dying of embarrassment, unable to grasp why his friend is handing him something so valuable. Blushing like crazy and shaking like a leaf, the chibi version of the guy taps the gold card on the turnstile under his gray-haired guide's calm directions. Stepping onto the flying train, Gio checks out the city view through glass windows, asking why such modern transport is surprisingly empty. The curator glances up thoughtfully, answering with a light sigh that the reason for the empty train isn't anything super special or major. He reveals the train is empty simply because the fare is way too pricey for most of the population, making the cloaked guy hum softly. Gio walks into the train car, thinking how wild it is for public transit to be so expensive, sourly reflecting on the ruthless power of capitalism. He sits on the cushioned bench, bitterly concluding that the massive gap between rich and poor seems to have gotten even worse over the years. Yu Sung-woon checks his wristwatch, showing 8:38 in the morning, commenting that usually there are about 10 people in that car. He explains that since it's working hours, all city workers are already at their posts, making the train look even more deserted and calm. Gio stands in complete disbelief hearing the time, getting even more shocked, learning average worker shifts start at 7 in the morning. He asks if human rights vanished from this country, laughing off that it's way better to keep living as a talking painting than become a boss's slave. The curator gazes at the horizon through the window and shifts topics, asking the guy if he remembers that tasty fish-shaped pastry from weeks ago. Gio confirms with a cute chibi smile, and the curator explains that if they're lucky enough, they might spot one of those street food stalls today. He starts listing treats like octopus balls, egg bread, and fish croquettes, leaving Gio totally quiet, drooling with craving at the description. Gio makes a hilarious blank face, starting to indignantly question if the curator actually sees him as human or just a haunted canvas. But he quickly brushes it off, remembering the black card in his pocket, thinking that being treated like a monster at least guarantees free food and perks. The curator mentions he'll look for stalls, but asks him not to get his hopes up since they're rare due to City Hall cosmetic rules. He explains that if complaints pop up, the biz gets shut down on the spot, and if the worker is from out of town, they might face major issues entering the city. The guy in the black cloak lets out a confused hum, picking up on what seems to be a ridiculously strict class divide between city locals and outsiders. While the flying train zooms rapidly between massive skyscrapers, Geo asks the curator with deep seriousness what the real reason for such division is. Yu Sung-woon looks away with a slightly gloomy face, admitting it's tough to explain, being just a sad reflection of the social climate. He shows his hunter license, explaining embarrassed that society nowadays is split into classes, Class 1 being hunters with solid jobs. He details that B-rank hunters and above belong to that privileged Class 1, provided they've never committed any major crimes. Regular citizens living in the capital, even without big salaries or fancy jobs, are automatically categorized as Class 2. The curator continues his breakdown, revealing humble workers coming from other provinces belong to humble Class 3. He adds that the poorest folks in slums, who don't even possess official ID documents, are implicitly labeled as Class 4. Lastly, criminals belong to Class 5 and aren't treated as human, with a standing order allowing them to be taken down on sight. Geo listens to everything silently, with a serious look under his black hood, thoughtfully reflecting on this terrible social layout turned norm. While watching fancy temples and rich buildings from above, he wonders if there's any valid reason for people to divide themselves to that point. The curator explains the need for defense barriers is the main driver, living in a world where you never know when a dungeon will burst open. They pull up in front of a gorgeous traditional restaurant, and the curator explains some monsters undefeated in the cataclysm live on Earth. He mentions that because of this, a massive defense wall surrounds the city, while we see a bizarre flying creature cross the blue sky. Stepping inside, he explains even building materials are extracted from monsters, so structures can withstand most enemy attacks. While the server lights a blue flame on the table, the curator shares internal security is tight and incidents are resolved fast. However, he reminds those resources are limited, and out in the provinces, people can easily perish if they drop their guard for a second. The curator mentions he picked that bulgogi BBQ joint precisely because they don't use monster meat in dishes, wishing him a great meal. Geo stands stunned, learning people eat monsters, thoughtfully reflecting on how much common sense flipped upside down in weird ways. The guy eats the delicious meat with chopsticks, surprised that the human world turned into such a tough, chaotic place in just 30 years. But he instantly cheers up, floating with pure joy upon realizing the traditional dish remains top-notch, a ray of light in that chaos. After lunch, they walk alongside a pretty city river canal, and the curator explains that even in winter, the weather there is super warm. He reveals the urban landscaping dep used magic on the canal to control climate and manage that environment like a greenhouse. The curator says anyone can stroll there, and Geo walks over curious upon spotting a super cute, bizarre little bird he's never seen before. Yu Sung-woon holds the cotton-like critter in hand, explaining tiny harmless monsters exist that completely lost hostility toward humans. Geo walks with several of those cotton birds perched on his head and shoulders, finding it amazing how species evolved to coexist. The curator finds it funny seeing cute birds adore the cloaked guy, humorously commenting he looks like a true animal magnet. He mentions canal water is warm too, suggesting Geo kick off his shoes to dip his feet, making the guy ask if that's actually allowed. The curator says it's fine since the place is deserted, and Geo steps into the crystal water, feeling an indescribable wave of peace. The dark-haired guy dips his bare feet into the canal's warm water, soaking in every second of that chill moment during his break walk. He picks up subtly that the smell of that water is totally different from the scentless, colorless water he used to see back in the old days on Earth. Geo looks at the current, softly commenting to his friend that the warm canal water is indeed super clear, transparent, and surprisingly deep. Suddenly, the curator catches a strangely sweet perfume coming from the canal, calling Geo's name with a surprised, weirded-out face. The cloaked guy stands up, confused why city canal water suddenly smells so strongly of the sea. Yu Sung-woon's eyes widen, scared, picking up on what's about to go down, trying to yell the guy's name before things spin out of control. Magically and creepily, a massive surge of clear water begins swirling and rising around Geo's body under the effect of his massive power. While the curator screams, panicked from afar, the dark-haired guy just flashes a subtle, super-confident smirk under his black hood. A massive magic vision of blonde Giovanni emerges mid-swirling water, commandingly asking the curator if he is truly Gio. Yu Sung-woon stands completely paralyzed from shock facing that bizarre scene, nervously answering yes while staring at the blonde figure. With an insanely sharp, glowing look under the hood, the man solemnly introduces himself, revealing to the curator his true name is Gio. The curator feels a crushing pressure hit his chest, breaking into a cold sweat panic, realizing the entity's threatening aura returned full force. Suddenly, the scene shifts drastically back to the Guild Hotel, where the curator humorously hands over the key card for Gio's room. He mentions he'll stay in the adjacent room, setting a meet-up for 6 to grab dinner together, receiving a super polite, soft confirm from Gio. With his friendliest smile ever, the curator wishes his cloaked buddy a good rest, gently shutting the wooden room door. But the second the door clicks shut, the silver-haired guy collapses to his knees on the hallway floor, trembling in panic, completely out of juice. He recalls with indescribable dread that terrifying divine presence he saw at the river, dead certain that creature was no human. He theories the guy might use the name Seo Gio because he's in South Korea, but the true essence of that creature goes way beyond a common name. The curator recalls that upon noticing that drastic energy shift at the canal, he made sure to ask the guy straight up if he was truly young Seo Gio, but he remembers shocked that the entity defined himself firmly and commandingly as just Gio, shedding every trace of humanity in his speech. Leaning on the hotel wall with hand on forehead, the curator humorously blames himself for dropping his guard with that monster just because he seemed cute. He realizes that no matter how much Gio dresses and acts like a normal person daily, he remains a force of nature and will never be a true human. He concludes, scared that all that sweetness was actually just the supreme power of a colossal force of nature, flawlessly mimicking a human. Completely drained and shaking in panic after the stroll, the guy flops face first onto the hotel bed, softly confessing it's all way too terrifying deep down. While the silver curator experiences a total breakdown in his hotel room from sheer anxiety, the scene shifts to show what Gio is up to. Gio admires the spectacular city view from the 45th floor window, while his stomach lets out another super loud hunger rumble right on cue. He pampers little honey in his palm, softly lamenting he can't feed it now, having had to sneak the critter into the hotel. Lying on the super comfy bed, he tosses the bird into the air, promising that as soon as they return, they'll cook something delicious with the leftover syrup. Meanwhile, the curator lying on his bed realizes things have been going fine so far, and the guy might just be trying his best in his own way. He checks his wristwatch with a worried gaze, sincerely praying the rest of the stroll wraps up without any major incidents. But to his absolute horror, the moment he finishes speaking, Gio reacts to the water again as they pass the canal leading to the restaurant. The curator screams, panicked for his friend, while the motorboat captain watches the scene terrified, completely lost on what's going down. To everyone's horror, the guy loses balance and falls toward the cold canal water, while his dark hair starts shifting color to a shiny blonde. Yu Sung-woon grabs Gio firmly so he won't fall off the boat, warning with terror that the guy is scaring the captain big time. Gio apologizes super calmly, justifying he's never seen a water canal like that before, so all his curiosity got triggered. But the curator scolds annoyed, saying even so, acting like you're about to jump off a boat out of nowhere is not acceptable mid-trip. He sighs relieved, saying he only yelled because he was super worried Gio would get hurt, and the cloaked guy sincerely thanks him for the concern. The silver hunter looks away with a super serious, worried expression, still feeling a slight chill over that entire mystery. Suddenly, Gio breaks the ice, asking his guide super directly and warmly if he happens to really love the sea and its vastness. Yu Sung-woon explains water levels rose due to aquatic monsters, prompting people to open these canals to let salt water flow through. He shares the salty smell stems from that, explaining he asked because he noticed Gio seems to really enjoy the ocean scent and breeze. The cloaked guy tilts his head thoughtfully, answering calmly and directly that deep down, he doesn't actually care for the sea that much. However, after a short reflective pause, he decides to follow up his mysterious thought with a major reveal regarding his blonde friend. He reveals Giovanni seems to really love the ocean, concluding with a light smile that because of that, he grew to like it too. The silver curator puts on that classic blank face, completely unable to wrap his head around what kind of confusing, contradictory answer that was. As the boat cuts through the water, Gio gazes at the blue horizon, curiously asking if mermaids also reside in that place. The curator freezes completely, catching Gio saying, "Here too," wondering thoughtfully where the guy pulled that wild mermaid story from. He recalls monstrous entities that spawn in the ocean, thinking certain ancient beings usually take on those mythical forms in the sea. The guy reflects that, in that chaotic world, mythical stuff like worshipping false idols, scary urban legends, and religious myths are super real. That happens because massive belief and strong human minds hold absolute power to materialize those myths and make them truly exist on Earth. Gio keeps staring into deep waters with a super calm, concentrated face, looking like he's recalling moments from his past. He remembers Giovanni's sad revelation about their planet shrinking and turning into a dungeon that follows strict rules. Giovanni's mission screen pops up in his mind again, reminding him of the goal to communicate with the sun god and put an end to the Little Mermaid. The youth's thoughts get interrupted when the boat driver politely announces they finally reached the trip's final destination. Gio stands amazed, seeing a gorgeous luxury restaurant built inside a giant shell, and the curator explains the spot is a leftover dungeon. While enjoying lunch, Gio asks what a fixed dungeon is, and the curator laughs, realizing the guy knows zero about those place types. He patiently breaks down that dungeons split into fixed and mobile, categorized as virtual, village type, or entry dungeons. He details virtual ones have no physical limits and trigger when swallowing people under random conditions, like 10 office workers in a shop. Gio finds that extremely unfair and ridiculous, disdainfully commenting on how unlucky it is to get dragged into a dangerous dungeon just going shopping. The curator agrees, saying virtual ones are tough to detect and cause massive damage, making Gio think about how heavy modern worries are. He explains fixed dungeons create settings that didn't exist on Earth before, like that gorgeous giant snail shell where they're eating now. He shares the dungeon there was about cooking, and a regular chef dragged in by accident managed to soften the boss's heart by cooking. He proudly shows the mission completed notification, and Gio finds the story super cute and insanely touching while eating his dish. He reveals that after beating the chef, he awakened the chef class, still actively working at 92 years old, shocking the cloaked guy. He shares the senior looks 50 because C-rank awakened ones and above hold the ability to age way slower. Gio covers his face with his hands, shocked, terrified, venting that having to work until 90 years old is absolute terror. The curator explains that when a clear dungeon layout remains on Earth without dangerous rules, it gets classified as a village-type dungeon. He wraps up saying entry dungeons work like portals in forests leading to other worlds, making Gio nod, confirming he finally got it all. With his friendliest look ever, the curator rests his face on his hand, warmly asking if Gio enjoyed the food and if lunch went smoothly. With a tender smile, Gio answers the meal was marvelous, and that sweet moment reminded him a lot of lunches with his beloved students. The Silver Hunter just listens to the affectionate vent in absolute silence, flashing his most genuine, welcoming smile ever. He says he's glad to see him happy, but worriedly thinks that if Gio wants to pass as human, he should pretend to care more about surrounding whispers. He decides it's best to leave fast, suggesting with a bright smile visiting Gyeongbokgung Palace, Seoul's main landmark. Hearing the famous historical Seoul Palace name, Gio gets super thoughtful, staring at the horizon under his hood with a focused gaze. He nostalgically recalls his teaching days, taking his beloved students on school trips and fun excursions to that exact Seoul Palace. Gio gets gloomy, wondering if those kids are living well in today's chaotic world, answering he's super eager to check out the palace. The curator recalls his childhood, already possessing the strange, bizarre ability to see mythical stuff nobody else could see. He used to point at nothing on the street trying to show a monster, and his childhood friend laughed, playfully saying nothing was there. The little hunter insisted it wasn't a monster, but apologized right after, scared of looking crazy, saying he just made a mistake. In reality, what he saw was a terrifying, massive dark smoke with glowing red eyes floating right in front of his neighbor's house. Sometimes those creepy dark sightings took softer, almost human forms, fooling anyone looking from afar while distracted. But deep down, the little hunter always clearly knew those weird things shared zero resemblance with normal plants or animals. He recalls a terrible fire destroyed his neighbor's house the next day, with rumors stating the whole family tragically passed inside. The little hunter remembers monstrous, dangerous things popped up occasionally, and that dark smoke had been trailing his neighbor lately. He humorously confesses he didn't know how the smoke caused people's ends, just watching the creature float weirdly in the alley. He explains he felt no malice from those monstrous sightings, though admitting their mere existence was a massive threat to everyone. The young pastry vendor wraps up that if he keeps cool and keeps pretending he can't see monsters, he won't be in any danger. Time flies, and cold night falls over the city's massive skyscrapers, bringing that classic freezing wind with tiny snowflakes. Little Honey glows on the cold ground while letting out another super loud stomach rumble of hunger, exposing Gio's belly is empty. Suddenly, pastry vendor Cha Yun-hyuk opens his eyes wide scared, realizing in panic that Gio and his tiny critter landed right in front of him. The system reveals Cha Eun-hyuk's backstory, working selling pastries to support younger siblings, including a priest and an F-rank female hunter. Eun-hyuk works hard as a third-class citizen, totally speechless when Gio steps up to the stall, politely asking the bag price. The pastry vendor goes into full internal panic, realizing that dark-cloaked creature with glowing eyes actually spoke to him. He stammers, scared out of his mind, saying it's 5,000 won for 10 pieces, shocked a monster mimics human behavior so well. Gio politely asks if he takes card payments, and the merchant nervously answers he prefers cash, but takes card too. The cloaked guy hands over Yu Sung-woon's no-limit gold card, super calmly, politely asking for just one bag of sweets. Scared of dying if he turns down the sale, the merchant warns in a cold sweat he'll need to bake a fresh batch, and Gio calmly agrees to wait. To the poor vendor's total shock, the blue card reader swipes the gold card without a single issue, printing the receipt super fast. He starts baking the fresh batch of pastries while wondering intrigued if that cloaked monster stole the card from some rich high-class hunter. Glancing sideways, Yoon-hyuk spots Gio's golden bird, starting to wonder if the guy is actually just a normal beast-tamer hunter, but he quickly tosses the idea out upon sensing that same chilling monster aura, fixing his terrified gaze on the small golden bird. He senses such dangerous energy coming from Honey that he concludes, scared that the bird's cute, shiny look is just a disguise. Shaking nervous with his gloved hands, the vendor finally hands over the paper bag packed with delicious, fresh, warm pastries to Gio. Gio thanks him super politely, grabbing the food bag, extending his arm decisively to hand over an unexpected gift to the poor merchant. He offers a massive, valuable, glowing blue gem, politely apologizing if he scared the worker while approaching. He asks Yoon-hyuk to accept the rare jewel as an apology for making him delay closing the stall and reopening to bake new pastries. The poor guy tries turning it down, stammering he didn't need all that, but Gio simply turns around super calmly, starting to walk off. The cloaked guy walks calmly back down the sidewalk under falling snowflakes in the cold city night, proudly holding his sweet bag. From afar, we see the cute little street food stall glowing alone mid-walkway, contrasting with the massive dark office building. Inside the stall, the vendor collapses weeping in relief with hands over face, crying tears of joy for surviving that bizarre encounter. He recalls that since childhood he thought he'd end up dying in some weird way nobody could explain due to his ability to see monsters. Curled up on the cold stall floor with hands on head, he breaks down sobbing that he was dead certain today was his final day. Suddenly, a monstrous chilling noise echoes right next to his ear, making the poor guy freeze in panic on the spot inside the booth. He slowly lifts his head, breaking into a cold sweat, letting out a confused murmur upon realizing the threat actually hasn't left. A giant, terrifying, skeletal dragon head with 3 glowing eyes emerges over the stall, staring down at the poor merchant on the floor. Without warning, the colossal monster lunges, biting Cha Yun-hyuk's head whole with its jaws packed with teeth. The poor merchant gets his head totally trapped inside the giant monster's mouth, sweating in panic, unable to make a single move. But to everyone's shock, the scary dragon transforms back into the cute little golden bird Honey, who pops up chirping happily on the counter. The yellow critter opens its shiny wings and flies off content into the snowy city night, leaving the poor vendor in total shock. Yoon-hyuk stays completely silent, processing everything that went down, concluding in sheer terror that he definitely needs to find a new spot to work tomorrow. Time passes, and our fun story skips 24 hours to take us straight to the day after that unusual alley gossip. Yu Sung-woon recognizes the vendor on the street, happily asking for a bag of pastries, while Gio follows silently under his big black hood. The merchant flashes a totally forced fake smile, thinking desperate that the world is way too small for him to escape that monster. He makes up an excuse that he switched spots to dodge inspectors, thinking relieved upon seeing Gio accompanied by an official elite hunter today. Suddenly, the vendor musters up courage, asking Yu Sung-woon straight up if the mysterious cloaked guy beside him happens to be a beast tamer. Geo offers a polite bow, thanking him super gently for that morning's pastries, leaving the silver curator completely jaw-dropped. The curator asks, confused, if Geo went out sneaking around late at night, and the guy confirms he had to run out to rescue Honey, who went missing from the room. Overhearing the gossip, the merchant breaks into a cold sweat, confirming his suspicions that the cloaked guy really is a colossal threat under Hunter custody. Yu Sung-woon hesitatingly confirms he is indeed a beast tamer, asking with slight suspicion if anything went wrong yesterday. Yoon-hyuk breaks into tears in chibi form, confirming yes, starting to stammer in terror while trying to recount the dragon's tragic attack to the curator. He tearfully explains that the cute bird named Honey suddenly transformed into a giant skeletal beast and chomped his head twice. Geo stands completely shocked, sweating cold under his hood hearing that heavy accusation regarding his beloved companion Honey's violent behavior. With an insanely furious, scary look on his face, the curator snaps around toward Geo, demanding instant explanations for that whole mess. Geo lowers his head super embarrassed under his hood, offering deep apologies to the vendor, wanting to know if he got hurt. The merchant waves his hand saying it didn't hurt and felt more like a prank, but Geo insists on apologizing on behalf of his little son. Yu Sung-woon almost falls backward hearing the word son, while Geo gently offers to examine the vendor, revealing he's a doctor. The curator stands completely frozen, jaw-dropped hearing the guy talk about being a doctor, unable to believe what just came out of Geo's mouth. He thinks shocked that even knowing all memories of the 29-year-old youth, he'd never imagined the painting guy could be a doctor. With a beautiful side smile under his black hood, Giovanni's sweet personality steps up calmly to help the scared vendor. The poor merchant turns red and stays still, feeling Geo's hands touch his head with extreme care and softness to inspect the bite mark. Meanwhile, in a dark, damp city alley, a mysterious woman wearing elegant high heels walks slowly, intriguing whispering. She walks thoughtfully down the long, deserted, narrow red brick alley, complaining frustrated that her target's trail vanished out of nowhere. Revealed to be Arya, the gorgeous, terrifying woman with blue hair and a glowing tail, angrily wonders if someone dared lift her spell from the spot. She turns around thoughtfully, commenting that neither the Sun Temple nor the media have a clue how the blonde priest vanished without a trace. Arya flashes a villainous side smirk, confessing they had the perfect plan to sabotage the major sun festival set to happen in the city. But to her annoyance, the target they needed to pull off that grand sabotage simply vanished off the map without leaving a physical clue. Arya looks back bossily, ordering Iser, her small and Soul Galaxy ally there, to step forward to take on that major mission. The young dark-haired guy with glowing yellow eyes answers with a firm, emotionless gaze that he won't disappoint his master Arya under any circumstances. A ghostly image of Arya's scary, evil face emerges in the background, laughing and sarcastically telling everyone not to be so tense and have fun. The scene shifts back to the dark, quiet alley, where the presence of those two mythical figures leaves a heavy aura of mystery and danger hanging in the cold air. Back at the stall, the vendor feels a super cozy, soft warmth flood his forehead the moment Geo's hands glow with divine magic. With an insanely tender, gentle smile, the blonde guy explains there was only a tiny scratch on the youth's head, and he's already purified it. The merchant touches his healed forehead with his glove, turning totally red and speechless, unable to believe the miracle that just went down there. Yu Sung-woon's blue eyes widen in pure panic, falling into total shock hearing the guy drop the term purification so casually in chat. He desperately questions how Geo can cast holy magic, worrying frantically if he'll ever actually uncover his friend's true identity. The pastry vendor beams a huge, excited smile, stammering with emotion, asking if the cloaked guy is actually a faithful believer too. He assumes relieved he was wrong because normal tamers don't worship gods, thinking he mistook the guy for a monster just because he's ridiculously strong. Yoon-hyuk reasons monsters don't use holy magic, glowingly concluding Geo must be such a faithful believer he should actually be an official priest. A cute memory flash of young, joyful Giovanni holding his holy book with a bright smile flashes in Geo's mind right at that moment. The vendor handles the pastries, nicely asking if, as faithful believers, they plan to attend the Sun Temple's initiation ceremony. Yu Sung-woon asks, surprised, if the sun ritual season is already here, and the merchant confirms, saying they usually hold it midwinter. The guy proudly shares his younger brother awakened as a priest and will join the ritual, happily assuming meeting Geo reminded him fondly of him. The curator comments friendly that he's heard it's way easier to receive divine grace when a large crowd of believers gathers at the temple. Yoon-hyuk agrees, assuming a tone of worry that he fears for his little brother's future if he doesn't get chosen by a god that day. The curator comforts his friend, saying that as a priest, he'll score a good job, and the vendor cheers up, inviting them to watch the grand event. Yoo Sung-woon grabs the bag, promising to attend, and Jio offers another respectful bow, inviting the nice guy to visit the Collectors Guild again. Walking back, the curator asks suspiciously if really nothing went down late at night, and Jio answers calmly that Honey swears it's innocent of everything. He sees Bird Honey chirping cutely while biting a pastry, thinking that even without knowing an origin being's concept of innocence, he needs to trust it. Stashing the valuable gold card in his wallet, the curator turns to his cloaked friend, calmly asking if he plans to head back into the canvas today. Gio nods, confirming yes, assuming that while the outside world is fun and full of new stuff, he prefers the peace of his studio. Facing the lovely painting of his cabin, Gio whispers with a hint of gloom that he feels the chaotic human world isn't his place. He watches the flying monster, thoughtfully reflecting on how dangerous and hostile the world turned for a fragile painted portrait to survive. Clutching his pastry bag tight to his chest, Gio walks thoughtfully back to the gallery, softly confessing he feels super scared of all that. Yoo Sung-woon watches him silently, fondly thinking it must be super tough for the guy, who is so gentle and sensitive, to push himself outside. He says he's glad he had fun, agreeing to let him know when the temple ritual starts so the guy can rest in the canvas until then. And so, after that brief, unusual walk through the big city, the young artist finally crosses the golden frame and returns to the peace of his lovely studio. Exhausted after burning so much energy in the real world, Gio flops under warm covers with the bird, sleeping deeply for an entire day straight. While the guy mutters softly asleep, the system screen pops up on the floating panel, revealing the assimilation rate climbed to 14%. Waking up, he holds Honey affectionately in his hands, thoughtfully reflecting that based on his knowledge, he must still be sinking with Giovanni. He notes the freezing sensation is way weaker inside the painting, and sinking slowed down a lot compared to touching water outside. He deduces this thermal protection must be a unique perk of his painted world, assuming he only caught the difference after stepping out yesterday. Lying on the twin bed, he humorously asks himself if this lag happens, because inside the frame he's treated as art and not human. And so, young Gio continues resting peacefully in his charming, quiet, painted forest, shielded from all dangers and cold outside. Gio gives a thumbs up, super proud of himself, celebrating he's truly awesome for keeping everything under control. The guy decides it's time to clear the mission to visit the old sun god, cheerfully announcing he'll prep a basket packed with sandwiches for the trip. We see the gorgeous, freshly prepped picnic meal with mouth-watering fresh sandwiches, packed with total affection for that mythical journey. The guy makes his first mythical brushstrokes, reaching his bare foot out to kick off the dimensional crossing, taking him straight to the ocean floor. The studio lights up with sunbeams, while Gio's mysterious silhouette intently watches the giant, realistic sea canvas he painted himself. Giovanni appears carrying several stacked gray boxes, politely asking if he can enter the sacred space of his temple beneath the ocean. A massive, blinding burst of white and golden light swallows the entire painting canvas, signaling the dimensional shift is going smoothly. He thanks politely on the ocean floor while wrapped in thousands of tiny glowing magic air bubbles in the deep blue ocean. We see the lovely silhouette of the young, long-haired blonde priest sitting majestically on a giant rock at the deepest point of that dark ocean. The guy apologizes for being late, calmly justifying he had to step out briefly to meet and try a bit of the chaotic human world. Suddenly, a massive, radiant magic sun begins shining intensely amid the darkness of those deep ocean waters of Giovanni. Clutching his fancy fishing rod tight, the young blonde marvels watching the magnificent sunlight descend from above, bathing the area in warmth. He flashes a nice smile, commenting, surprised that even clearly underwater at the ocean floor, he can still breathe with total ease there. He wonders if that happens from already being gone, or if his essence remains tied to the canvas, feeling no longer bound by physical laws. That feeling of total freedom and mythical immunity is identical to what he felt resting in the peace of his cabin in that painted forest. A small, friendly spirit critter with cartoonish features pops up, glowing brightly amid those blue ocean water bubbles. The handsome young man with long golden hair puts on his sweetest, most welcoming look, admiring the cute sight of his great friend, the sun god. Giovanni softly laments affectionately, emotionally commenting that seeing the ocean abandoned makes him feel like he lost his beloved homeland. He uses the solar miracle to spawn protective air bubbles to keep the picnic sandwiches dry, letting them eat without soaking the food. Giovanni offers the snack to the sun god, wishing a great meal, and the system notifies the objective to communicate with the deity was cleared. Back at the Collectors Guild, the Red Master joins hands, laughing hard, humorously asking if the black-cloaked guy really seems to have a split personality. Yu Sung-woon sighs exhausted, complaining the boss insisted on calling him to the office in person instead of just waiting for the official trip report. The curator explains he doesn't just babysit Gio, stressed revealing the sea has been super rough lately, causing him to get summoned constantly. The red-haired master displays his classic greedy predator look, hearing the word sea, smelling rare relics in the air. Yu Sung-woon shares that origin offspring movement around the city canal has been extremely weird and super suspicious lately. He puts on an extremely serious face, alerting his boss that something awful and super dangerous might end up going down in ocean waters soon. But to the poor curator's despair, the master gives a super sarcastic smirk, shouting joyfully that huge problem is none of his business. The gray-haired guy puts on that classic blank face, confessing with a disappointed sigh that he knew full well the boss would say that. Bisa Bayol zeroes in on the fact an origin being returned unharmed from the walk, getting hyped that he displayed such a friendly personality. The boss invades the curator's space, saying he can't wait for paperwork, and Yu Sung-woon sarcastically counters, that's why Gio dodges him so much. Back at the ocean, the blonde guy casts his line into the water, laughing as he comments that with everything submerged, fishing turned into a tough chore. He shares he wanted to catch fried fish for dinner, embarrassed admitting he's one of the few people who can't swim, needing help. The blonde looks at little Honey glowing next to the solar deity, curiously asking if the cute golden bird actually holds the ability to hunt. Little Honey shakes its yellow body, making a lazy no gesture, making clear it wants zero part in hunting any fish down there. At the guild, the curator explains that ever since Gio sealed his spirit power, he seemed to transform into a totally different entity than usual. The Red Master gets super surprised, shocked learning the monster managed to voluntarily slash his own power down to a human baseline, but he quickly flashes a villainous smile, saying that instead of surprising, that's gross, comparing power sealing to chopping off flesh for nothing. He wants to know if Gio faced health issues, and the curator shares the guy looked way more exhausted the longer he stayed outside, but nothing major. He recalls the original Gio used to be a bit more arrogant, and the curator corrects saying the guy was actually always super polite and commanding. He thoughtfully remembers that even calling himself a normal human, the guy watched Collector's Gallery staff and praised them like tiny ants. The curator says Gio's habit of handing out sweets or rare gems as rewards gave the distinct vibe of a superior being gifting subordinates. However, he considers that Gio with reduced power didn't transmit that crushing divine presence, actually appearing to be a real human. The curator seriously reveals that upon hitting direct contact with canal water, the guy didn't even look like that 29-year-old youth. The master listens, shocked, to the reveal that Gio's physical look flipped completely, and he started casting healing magic supernaturally. We see Giovanni's mythical figure under the solar halo, while the curator says his personality flipped for good, but he kept introducing himself as Gio. Back at the ocean, the blonde guy smiles at Honey, laughing as he asks if the bird really wants him to close his eyes while fishing. He pets the yellow critter laughing, saying, "Daddy will love it anyway," joking he knew its potential since learning about the bite. Cute little Honey puts on an extremely determined face, chirping super decisively, showing it's ready to give its all in fishing today. Finding the bird's cuteness irresistible, the young blonde laughs hard, pointing at the critter, proudly showing the sun god how cute his grand bird is. He covers his eyes with his hands, laughing as he warns he respects the secret and Honey can call him only when it finishes hunting all dinner fish. The Collector's Guild master intently watches the painting, thinking super deeply about the mysterious laws governing Gio's portrait. The curator explains the name Gio wasn't assigned by any normal human, and in reality, they're just seeing the designation set by the origin itself. He reveals hunter abilities are backed by the origin, meaning the canvas designation is the official title the system granted it. The master understands that's not a name humans can alter, noting the fact that they can't read any info beyond that is super suspicious. He deduces the origin blocked access to Gio's info for safety, deciding through its absolute rules that those data points cannot be read. Meanwhile, at sea, Honey pops up super chubby, stuffed with fish in its mouth, leaving the young blonde super proud of the critter's unreal catch. The boss reflects all that sounds a lot like a mythical deity's tale, raising the unsettling hypothesis that Geo might actually be a god. He stays thoughtful, staring at the curator, wondering if Geo is indeed a colossal, incomprehensible force no normal human can define. Giovanni holds the box packed with fresh fish with a big smile, inviting the sun god to join them for dinner to enjoy that awesome catch at the cabin. The silver hunter looks away thoughtfully, assuming that regardless of Geo's real identity or origin, he will help him out. The master seriously reminds that giving a living story to a random setting and writing rules for it on paper is an extremely dangerous move in itself. He explains that kind of created magical entity can easily morph into a colossal catastrophe simply through people's strong belief. Oblivious to all that serious guild talk in the capital, the young blonde just displays his happiest look prepping for dinner with friends. The master shrugs, laughing, saying all that is just mental speculation, though reaffirming with conviction that Geo's existence isn't normal. Yu Sung-woon sits down tired on the couch, decisively claiming he plans to approach this modified Geo with triple the caution from here on. He reflects that while Geo believes he's a regular person, the guy doesn't even care that his actions are totally detached from a normal human. He watches the guy cut fish peacefully, thinking he's way too unbothered for someone wielding power capable of wiping out all humanity. Little Honey pops up munching a nice piece of fish with total gusto, making cute chewing sounds while enjoying its delicious feast. The silver curator concludes with a super worried gaze that no normal human on Earth could bear such a heavy burden. He thinks, with deep dread, that if he asks carelessly about Geo's different personalities, the whole situation could spiral way out of his control. Oblivious to everything, young Geo ties a white cloth around his head, throwing on an apron to cook the fresh fish for dinner with his usual care. The curator fears the monster will lose control if he uncovers the truth, while Geo serves warm fried fish at the table, cheerfully announcing dinner is served. Geo proudly shares he used the solar miracle to make the breading extra crispy, making the mythical teddy bear and Honey wait eagerly for the food. The guy savors the dish with chopsticks under the attentive eyes of his tiny companions, who also enjoy the fried fish with huge joy and hunger. Geo praises the fresh fish taste, suggesting with a nice smile using vegetables from his fresh garden to prep their next feast. The Red Master confirms he's prepping Geo's official hunter license, ensuring the guy needs to keep pretending to be human for everyone's sake. The red-haired master flashes a curious side smile, asking if the golden pet bird is truly a creature Geo brought to life through a drawing. The curator confirms, saying Geo brought the animal on the stroll this time, but calmly notes nothing super major went down during the route. The master cuts the curator off, focused reasoning that if Geo can materialize food, gems, and animals in the real world just by drawing stuff. He taps his index finger on his temple, dropping the golden question of what wild things would go down if Geo decided to paint an entire landscape. Back at the canvas cabin, the teddy bear with the red tie sleeps a super deep, peaceful nap beside its cute blue friends on the floor. Geo walks through the garden wearing a straw hat with Honey on his head, putting on a face of extreme surprise and shock facing his plant's state there. The guy looks tiny next to the colossal size of his giant tomatoes and massive corn cobs, unable to grasp what on earth happened to his garden. He desperately wonders where his tiny cherry tomatoes went, thinking his quiet garden suddenly morphed into an Amazon jungle. He inspects the giant corn cob, questioning if that wild growth is the work of some canvas magic power or if the seeds were modified. Suddenly, the young artist narrows his dark gaze attentively and seriously, sensing something weird and dangerous hidden mid-foliage. Geo pushes aside giant green leaves with his hand, coming face to face, startled with a large, fresh pool of red blood pooled on the ground. To his absolute horror, the guy spots the lifeless body of a young deer fallen in the dense woods, signaling a violent attack went down right nearby.